In the soft glow of a computer screen, surrounded by the gentle hum of technology, a storm rages unseen. It is the storm within the modern mind. A phone buzzes, a silent vibration that screams for attention, another notification in an endless stream. The inbox icon shows a number, a digital weight pressing down. Each email a promise of a task, a demand, a problem to be solved. And beneath this external noise, the internal monologue runs rampant, a relentless narrator replaying yesterday's mistakes and rehearsing tomorrow's anxieties. We sit in our chairs, in our cars, in our homes, and feel a profound sense of exhaustion, a weariness that sleep cannot touch. We are trapped, not by walls of brick and mortar, but by the ceaseless turning of our own thoughts, a prison of our own design. We have been taught, from our very first day in school, that the key to any problem is to think our way through it, to analyze, to strategize, to deconstruct and reconstruct. We have sharpened our intellect into a fine and powerful tool, and it has built wonders, but we were never taught how to turn it off. And so, when the problem is the thinking itself, our only tool becomes our tormentor. We try to think our way out of overthinking. We analyze our anxiety, we strategize our escape from stress, and in doing so, we only feed the very machine that drains us. We are caught in a loop, a frantic search for a quiet room inside a house that is already on fire with noise. But what if there was another way? A path that does not require more thinking, but less. A form of wisdom that is not found in adding more information, but in gently subtracting the noise. This is the path pointed to by Zen, a tradition that is less a system of belief and more a practical art of discovery. It does not offer complex answers or doctrines to memorize. Instead, it offers a mirror. It gently suggests that the peace we are so desperately seeking on the outside, through success, through possessions, through the validation of others, is not a destination to be reached. It is a space to be uncovered, a quiet, boundless space that already exists, right here, right now, just beneath the surface of our turbulent thoughts. This is an invitation to explore that space, a journey beyond the limits of language, into the heart of healing silence. It is a journey not of escape, but of return. A return home to the profound and ever-present stillness that is, and has always been, waiting patiently within you. Before we can even begin to speak of silence, we must first become intimately acquainted with the noise, not the noise of traffic or construction or the television left on in an empty room. This is a deeper, more pervasive noise, a constant symphony of chaos that plays not in our ears, but in the very center of our being. It is the soundtrack of the unexamined life, and its volume has been turned up so high for so long that most of us have forgotten that silence is even an option. This noise is composed of two primary elements, an inner world and an outer world, that feed and amplify each other in a relentless feedback loop. The inner noise is the one we know most intimately, the unceasing chatter of our own mind. Buddhist tradition has a wonderfully apt name for this phenomenon, the monkey mind. Imagine a monkey in a tree, restless, agitated, never still. It swings from one branch to another, grabbing a fruit here, chasing a leaf there, screeching at a shadow, then suddenly leaping to an entirely different tree. This is a perfect metaphor for our own consciousness when left to its own devices. In a single minute, your mind can swing from a worry about a deadline at work to the memory of an awkward thing you said 10 years ago. From there, it leaps to a fantasy about a future vacation, then it remembers you need to buy milk, then it starts a political argument with an imaginary opponent, and then it chastises itself for not being focused. There is no rhyme or reason, no peace, just constant, frantic motion. This monkey mind is not your enemy. In its evolutionary origins, it was a survival tool. This scanning, planning, worrying function was designed to keep us safe, to look for threats in the rustling grass, and to remember where the good fruit was found. But in our modern world, where physical threats are few, this mechanism has not shut off. Instead, it has turned inward. It scans for social threats, for threats to our ego, for imagined slights and future disasters. It endlessly chews on problems that are either in the unchangeable past or the non-existent future. It lives anywhere but here, and its native language is one of judgment. It labels everything. This is good, that is bad. I like this, I hate that. I am right, they are wrong. This is success, that is failure. This constant stream of commentary and categorization is profoundly exhausting. Think of your mental energy as a finite resource, like a battery. Every moment spent in this uncontrolled, analytical, worry-driven thinking is a drain on that battery. Every hypothetical argument you have in the shower, every time you mentally replay a mistake, every second you spend scrolling through images of other people's lives and comparing them to your own, you are depleting your vital energy. This is why you can have a day where you do nothing physically demanding at all, and yet you end it feeling utterly drained, hollowed out. It is the deep exhaustion of a mind that has been at war with itself, running 1,000 simulations of disaster and discontent all day long. You feel both wired and tired, a state of agitated weariness that has become the signature affliction of our time. This internal state of chaos does not exist in a vacuum. It is constantly being fed and encouraged by the world outside. Modern society, particularly in the West, has come to glorify busyness. We wear our stress like a badge of honor. Our calendars are packed, our schedules are relentless, and we answer the question, "How are you?" with a sigh and a single word, busy. This has become a synonym for important, for valuable. The unspoken fear is that if we are not busy, we are not contributing, we are not succeeding. Stillness is seen as laziness, and solitude is often mistaken for loneliness. We have created a culture that is afraid of empty space, of quiet moments, and so we fill them. We pull out our phones while waiting in line for coffee. We listen to podcasts while walking the dog. We have the news on in the background while we make dinner. We are terrified of being left alone with the one thing we are trying to escape, our own mind. This cultural pressure is then supercharged by the very technology we hold in our hands. Our devices are engineered for addiction. The endless scroll of a social media feed is designed to keep the monkey mind entertained, leaping from outrage to envy to desire, one post at a time. The constant ping of notifications creates a state of perpetual alert, a low-grade anxiety that something always needs our immediate attention. We are bombarded with information, with opinions, with curated images of perfection that make our own messy, beautiful lives seem inadequate. The outer world has become a relentless amplification system for our inner noise. It validates the monkey mind's belief that there is always something to worry about, something to desire, something to fix. There's a story of a man who grew weary of the noise of his city. The sounds of merchants, of carts, of shouting children grated on his nerves. He believed that if only he could find a place of perfect quiet, he would finally find peace. He sold his belongings and journeyed for weeks, high into the mountains, to a cave that was known to be the most silent place on earth. He entered the cave, sat down, and for a moment, he experienced a blissful calm. The external noise was gone, but then he began to hear something else. A faint, rhythmic drip, drip, drip of water from the cave ceiling. It began to annoy him. Then he became aware of the sound of the wind whistling over the mouth of the cave. He noticed the sound of his own swallowing. He could hear the thumping of his own heart, a frantic drumbeat in the vast silence. And then, loudest of all, came the sound of his own thoughts, his worries, his plans, his regrets, his judgments, which had been masked by the city's noise, were now roaring in the stillness, deafening him. He realized, in that moment, that he had traveled all this way only to discover that he had carried the greatest source of noise with him all along. He could not run from it because it was inside him. This story illustrates the fundamental truth we must grasp before we can take a single step forward. The goal is not to wage war on our thoughts. The goal is not to defeat the monkey mind, to silence it by force. To fight your mind is a battle you can never win. It is like trying to use your hand to stop your own fist. The struggle itself is just more noise, more agitation. The first, most courageous, and most revolutionary step is simply to notice without judgment. without criticism. You simply become aware of the chaos. You sit, perhaps just for a moment, and you listen to the symphony. You observe the monkey mind as you would observe a weather pattern. You do not blame the clouds for being cloudy or the rain for being wet. You simply see that they are there. In the same way, you begin to observe your thoughts. Ah, you can say to yourself, with a gentle curiosity, there is a thought of worry. There is a thought of judgment. There is the mind doing its monkey-like dance. In this simple act of noticing, something miraculous begins to happen. A space is created, a tiny gap appears between you, the observer, and the thought that is being observed. You are no longer completely entangled in the thought, completely identified with it. You are the sky, and the thought is just a cloud passing through. For the first time, you may realize that you are not the noise. You are the one who is hearing the noise. This recognition, this simple, non-judgmental awareness, is the beginning of all true silence. It is the first ray of light entering the prison cell. For once, we have truly seen the nature of this restless noise, this frantic inner activity. A profound question begins to surface in the newfound quiet. If I am the one watching the thought, then who am I? If I can observe the monkey, who is the observer? To truly understand the noise, we must now turn our gentle attention to the one who seems to be making it. We must begin to investigate the very nature of the self that we believe to be at the center of this lifelong storm. Having identified the pervasive noise of the monkey mind, we are left standing before a profound question. Who is the source of this noise? If we can observe the frantic thoughts, who is the observer? This inquiry leads us directly to the heart of our perceived identity, to the conductor of our inner orchestra, the one we call I. In the philosophy of the East, this construct is often referred to as the ego. It's crucial to understand that this is not the ego of Western psychology, but something more fundamental. It is the imagined center of our universe, the storyteller and main character of the epic drama we call my life. The ego is not a solid entity, not a little person sitting inside your skull pulling levers. It is more like a process, a tightly woven bundle of thoughts, memories, beliefs, and sensations that we have mistaken for a permanent, independent self. Think of it this way. The ego is a collection. It is composed of your name, your history, the stories you tell about your childhood. It includes your job title, your accomplishments, your failures. It is made of your political opinions, your taste in music, your physical appearance, and the way you believe others see you. It is the voice that says, I'm the kind of person who is always on time, or I've never been good at math. It's a collage of past experiences and future projections, a narrative stitched together since birth. The fundamental illusion is that we believe we are this collage. We look at this bundle of fleeting thoughts and memories and declare, this is me. We mistake the story for the storyteller, the character for the actor. Zen wisdom gently suggests that our true nature is not the bundle, but the awareness that holds the bundle. You are not the story. You are the silent, spacious page on which the story is written. So why does this mental construct, this ego, create so much noise and suffering? Because its very nature is insecure. Being just a story, a fragile collection of thoughts, its deepest, most primal fear is the fear of its own dissolution. It is terrified of not existing. This deep-seated fear manifests as a desperate, unending need for control. The ego believes that if it can just manage every outcome, control other people's perceptions, and predict and secure the future, it can ensure its own survival. It wants reality to be fixed, stable, and predictable. But the universe, by its very nature, is fluid, dynamic, and uncertain. Life is a flowing river, and the ego is a frantic man trying to build a dam across it with his bare hands. The constant, grinding friction between the ego's demand for certainty and life's reality of impermanence is the very essence of what we call anxiety. Anxiety is the energy expended by the ego in its futile attempt to nail down the future and solidify the present. It is the background hum of a system constantly fighting a battle it can never win. To maintain this illusion of control, the ego's primary tool is judgment. It scans every experience, every person, every moment, and sorts it into one of two boxes. This is for me, or this is against me. Things that support its narrative, that make it feel secure, important, or right, are labeled good. We then develop a craving for these things. Things that challenge its story, that threaten its sense of control, or that reveal its fragility, are labeled bad. We then develop an aversion to these things. Our life becomes a relentless pursuit of the good, and a frantic flight from the bad. We chase praise and flee criticism. We seek pleasure and avoid pain. We cling to people who validate our story and push away those who don't. This endless cycle of craving and aversion, of liking and disliking, is the engine that drives the monkey mind and perpetuates our suffering. The ego is a small tyrant, demanding that the entire universe conform to its preferences and throwing a tantrum of anger, fear, or despair when it inevitably does not. There is a timeless Taoist parable that beautifully illustrates this. A man is enjoying a quiet boat ride on a serene lake. As he rounds a bend, another boat suddenly collides with his, jolting him. His immediate reaction is a flash of anger. He opens his mouth to shout at the careless person who hit him, to berate them for their incompetence. But as he looks closer, he sees that the other boat is empty. It had simply come untied from the shore and was drifting with the current. In that instant of recognition, his anger completely vanishes. It has nowhere to go. There is no one to blame, no other to be the target of his indignation. The energy of his anger simply dissolves into the quiet of the lake. Let this story sink in. Who, or what, was the man angry at? He was not angry at the boat itself. He was angry at the idea of a person in the boat, an other whose carelessness had infringed upon his eye. His ego had instantly created a story of blame and victimhood. But when the story was proven false, when he realized there was no offending I in the other boat, his own reactive I had no opponent. The conflict simply ceased to be. The profound question the story leaves us with is this: what if most of the boats that bump into us in the river of life are empty? What if the colleague who makes a dismissive comment is not personally attacking you, but is simply adrift in their own current of insecurity? What if the driver who cuts you off is not trying to disrespect you, but is lost in their own storm of private anxieties? When we see this, our relationship with the world begins to change. We start to see that most of what we take as a personal offense is just the clashing of empty, drifting boats. The practice, then, is not to attack or destroy the ego. That would be just another act of aggression, another form of inner conflict. The ego is, in a practical sense, a necessary tool. It helps you remember your name and your address. It allows you to function in the world. The problem is not having an ego. The problem is being completely identified with it. It is like confusing your driver's license for your entire being. The license is a useful tool for driving, but it says nothing about the depths of who you are. The path of wisdom is to begin observing this conductor, this storyteller, with a kind of gentle, detached curiosity. When a strong emotion arises pride, jealousy, defensiveness, shame, you can learn to pause. You can ask, what part of my story feels threatened right now? What belief about me is being challenged? You simply watch it. You might notice there is the ego, wanting to be seen as intelligent. There it is, feeling small because someone else received praise. You watch its strategies, its fears, and its desires without getting swept away by them. You give them space. You see them as patterns of energy, not as the absolute truth of who you are. As we practice this observation, the ego's grip begins to loosen. We no longer have to believe every story it tells us. We realize we have a choice. We can let the empty boat drift by without needing to shout at it. This creates an immense sense of freedom and lightness. But this process also reveals something else. This fragile sense of self, this ego, is defined by a feeling of lack. Because it is just a construct, it never feels whole or complete. It is perpetually hungry. It carries a deep-seated sense of not enoughness. This inner void creates a powerful drive to fill itself up from the outside, to build and fortify its identity with things, with status, with achievements. This fundamental hunger of the illusory leads us directly into our next exploration, the world of materialism and the endless, unsatisfying chase for happiness in things. The insecure and perpetually hungry ego, that fragile story of I, feels an emptiness at its core. It experiences itself as a bottomless bowl, a void that needs to be filled, and so it begins a search. It turns its attention outward, scanning the world for something, anything, to pour into this emptiness, to make it feel solid, real, and whole. This is the psychological root of the materialistic chase, a desperate scramble to acquire, possess, and consume, driven by the mistaken belief that happiness is a commodity that can be bought and owned. This outward search is powered by a force known in Buddhist teachings as attachment, or upadana. To understand this, we must first make a critical distinction between natural desire and the suffering caused by attachment. Desire itself is not the problem. It is a natural part of being alive. The desire for food when you are hungry, for water when you are thirsty, for warmth when you are cold, or for connection when you are lonely, is simply the organism's intelligence at work. The path of Zen is not a path of lifeless denial. The problem arises when desire morphs into clinging, into attachment. Attachment is the voice of the ego that whispers, "My happiness depends on this thing. I cannot be whole without it." It is the act of fusing your sense of well-being, your very identity, to an external object, person, or outcome. It is the difference between enjoying a beautiful sunset and feeling a desperate need to capture it, own it, and then feeling anxious that the next sunset might not be as good. It is the difference between loving a person and believing you cannot possibly live without them. Attachment is the clenched fist around the object of desire. It is the source of its own tension and pain. This grasping nature of the ego locks us into a cycle that modern psychology has called the hedonic treadmill. It is a pattern so universal that once seen, you will recognize it everywhere in your life and in the world around you. The cycle begins with a feeling of lack, the familiar emptiness of the bottomless bowl. The ego then identifies an external target that it believes will finally fill the void and deliver lasting happiness. It could be a new phone, a bigger house, a promotion at work, a certain number of followers on social media, or even a perfect romantic partner. This target becomes the focal point of all our energy. We enter the pursuit phase. We work longer hours. We save. We scheme. We worry. Our mind is consumed by the if only and when I scenarios. When I get that car, I'll finally feel successful. If only I could afford that vacation, all my stress would disappear. Then comes the moment of acquisition. We get the thing we so desperately wanted. And for a moment it works. There is a rush of pleasure, a hit of dopamine, a feeling of satisfaction and relief. The bottomless bowl feels full. The ego feels validated. We have arrived. But this feeling is tragically temporary. This is the crucial stage of the cycle, adaptation. The new and exciting quickly becomes the new normal. The pleasure fades. The shiny new car becomes just a mode of transportation that gets stuck in traffic. The promotion becomes a new set of responsibilities and pressures. The perfect partner reveals themselves to be a normal human being with their own flaws and challenges. This is called hedonic adaptation, and it is a fundamental feature of our psychology. The novelty wears off, and the baseline of our happiness returns to where it was before. And with that return, the old feeling of emptiness, of not enoughness, creeps back in. The ego, still feeling insecure, simply identifies a new, often bigger and better, target. The car is nice, but what I really need is the sports model. This job is okay, but a vice president title would make me truly secure. And so, the treadmill starts up again. We run and run, accumulating more things, more achievements, more experiences, but our fundamental level of contentment remains the same. We are trapped in a cycle of striving and dissatisfaction, perpetually reaching for a horizon that recedes as we approach it. This internal, psychological treadmill is the engine of our entire consumer culture. The world of advertising and marketing understands this cycle better than we understand it ourselves. It is a multi-trillion-dollar industry built upon the exploitation of the bottomless bowl. An advertisement for a luxury watch is not selling a time-telling device. It is selling status, respect, and sophistication. An ad for a soft drink is not selling flavored sugar water. It is selling friendship, joy, and belonging. An ad for a cosmetic product is not just selling a cream. It is selling the promise of defeating time, of holding back the natural process of aging, which is the ego's ultimate fantasy of permanence. The culture constantly creates and reinforces our sense of lack. It is designed to make you feel that you are not quite right as you are, but that you could be, if only you bought this product. It fans the flames of comparison, showing us curated lives of impossible perfection, ensuring that we always feel one step behind. It dangles the next promise just out of reach, guaranteeing that we stay on the treadmill, running towards a happiness that is always for sale, but never delivered. There is a simple yet profound story that captures the essence of this self-imposed trap. A monkey, wandering through a forest, comes across a glass jar left by a traveler. Inside the jar are delicious-looking peanuts. The jar has a narrow opening, just wide enough for the monkey to slide its empty hand in. It reaches inside and grabs a huge handful of peanuts. It is a triumphant moment. But when it tries to pull its hand out, it gets stuck. The fist, now fat with its prize, is too large to fit through the narrow opening. The monkey pulls and screeches, growing more and more frustrated and panicked. It is trapped. A wise old monkey watches from a nearby tree and calls down, "Friend, just let go of some of the nuts." But the monkey cannot. The idea of letting go of its prize is unthinkable. And so it remains there, a prisoner, not of the jar, but of its own grasping fist. We are that monkey. The jar is our world of attachments. The peanuts are the possessions, the status symbols, the beliefs, and even the resentments that we cling to so tightly, believing they are essential for our happiness or identity. We feel trapped by our circumstances, by our jobs, by our desires, but the story reveals that the prison is of our own making. The door is not locked from the outside. Freedom is available in any given moment. It lies in the simple yet radical act of opening our hand. This is the true meaning of letting go, or renunciation, in the path of wisdom. It is not necessarily about external action. It does not mean you must sell your home and live in a cave. For most of us, it is an internal shift in perspective. It means you can own a car, but you let go of the belief that the car makes you a better person. You can enjoy a delicious meal, but you let go of the craving that makes you miserable if the next meal isn't as good. It is the art of holding all things in life with an open hand, not a clenched fist. You enjoy them while they are here, and you allow them to leave when it is their time, without the desperate, painful clinging of the ego. You learn to appreciate the warmth of the fire without trying to grab and possess the flame. As we look at this pattern, the restless noise of the mind, the insecure ego conducting the chaos, and the unsatisfying, materialistic chase it propels us on, we begin to see that these are not separate problems. They are all symptoms, different expressions of a single underlying condition. It is a fundamental friction between our demands and reality, a pervasive sense of things being not quite right. This state of being, this subtle and sometimes overwhelming dissatisfaction, was perfectly understood and diagnosed by the Buddha more than 2,500 years ago. He gave it a name that is the cornerstone of his entire teaching. To move towards healing, we must first have the courage to look squarely at this diagnosis, to understand the nature of the dis-ease itself. This brings us to the first noble truth, the universal reality of what is called dukkha. We have traced the threads of our unease from the surface to the source. We started with the relentless noise of the monkey mind. We saw how that noise is conducted by a fragile, insecure ego, a sense of I that is fundamentally a story. We then witnessed how this hungry ego drives us onto the hedonic treadmill of materialism, a futile chase to fill an inner void with external things. These are the symptoms, but now we arrive at the diagnosis. we arrive at the foundational insight upon which the entire path of Buddhist wisdom is built. This is the first noble truth, a statement often translated from the ancient Pali language as life is suffering. This translation, however, is a clumsy and misleading one. It paints the path as pessimistic, a grim declaration of doom. The reality is far more subtle, practical, and ultimately far more hopeful. The word used by the Buddha was dukkha. There is no single perfect translation for dukkha. It can mean suffering, yes, but it also means stress, unease, dissatisfaction, or that which is difficult to bear. Perhaps the most helpful metaphor is to think of dukkha as a pebble in your shoe. Sometimes, dukkha is a sharp, jagged stone that causes acute, undeniable pain, but more often, it is a tiny, persistent grain of sand. It doesn't cripple you, but it's always there, a subtle source of friction and irritation that makes the entire journey of life uncomfortable. The first noble truth is not a metaphysical judgment that existence is bad. It is a compassionate, clinical diagnosis of the human condition. It is the great physician of the mind looking at us with kindness and saying, "I see where it hurts. I see the nature of your disease." To acknowledge dukkha is not to be a pessimist, it is to be a realist. It is the first essential step toward healing, because you cannot find a cure until you have the courage to face the diagnosis. To understand this diagnosis more deeply, the Buddha described dukkha in 3 distinct flavors or types. The first is the most obvious, dukkha, or the suffering of suffering. This is the pebble when it is a sharp stone. It is the raw, unavoidable pain of life. It is the pain of a migraine headache, the grief of losing a loved one, the sting of betrayal, the despair of failure, the fear that comes with a serious illness, and the reality of our own aging and death. This form of dukkha is undeniable. No amount of positive thinking can wish it away. It is an inherent part of the human experience, a given of our existence. The second type is more subtle, viparinama dukkha, or the suffering of change. This is the suffering that arises from the fact that even our pleasant experiences are impermanent. This is a profound insight. It means that our happiness itself contains a seed of dukkha. Think of a moment of perfect joy. You've received the promotion you worked so hard for. You're on a beautiful beach watching a perfect sunset. You're laughing with someone you love. In the midst of that peak experience, a subtle anxiety often arises. A small voice whispers, "This won't last." We start to worry about the sun going down, about the vacation ending, about the feeling fading. We cling to the happy moment, and our very clinging, our resistance to the natural flow of change, becomes a source of suffering. The joy itself is pure, but our attachment to it, our fear of losing it, taints it with anxiety. This is the pain of knowing that every sandcastle, no matter how beautiful, will eventually be washed away by the tide. We try to grasp the water of a flowing river, and our failure to do so is viparinama dukkha. The third type is the most subtle and all-pervasive of all, sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the ever-present, low-grade background hum of dissatisfaction that permeates our lives, even when nothing is overtly wrong. It is the pebble in the shoe in its most basic form. It is that feeling of, "Is this all there is?" that can surface on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday afternoon. It arises from the fundamental friction between our desire for permanence and control and the reality of a world that is inherently impermanent, interdependent, and uncontrollable. It is the dukkha of being a self, a constructed ego, in a world where everything is in constant flux. Our thoughts, our emotions, our bodies, our relationships, our world is all a ceaseless flow of conditioned phenomena arising and passing away. And the ego, wanting solid ground to stand on, finds this constant change deeply unsettling. Sankhara dukkha is the inherent unsatisfactoriness of a life spent trying to find lasting security where none can be found. To illustrate how we amplify this inherent dukkha, the Buddha told a powerful parable. He said that a person walking through the world will inevitably be struck by an arrow from time to time. This is the first arrow. This represents the unavoidable pains of life, the dukkha of illness, loss, and misfortune. Getting hit by this first arrow hurts. It is painful, and it is not our fault. But what do most of us do the moment we are struck by the first arrow? We immediately shoot ourselves with a second one. This second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is the arrow of judgment, resentment, and fear. We cry out, "Why me? This is unfair. I can't stand this." We descend into self-pity. We spin stories of catastrophe about the future. We become angry at the person or situation we believe caused the pain. This entire cascade of mental proliferation, the blame, the fear, the anger is the second arrow. The Buddha's profound point was this: the first arrow is inevitable, but the second arrow is optional. Life will always have first arrows. You will get sick. People you love will leave you. You will face disappointment. But the bulk of our deepest, most prolonged suffering comes not from the first arrow, but from the second, the one we shoot at ourselves. Our anxiety is not the first arrow of a future event. It is the second arrow of our catastrophic thinking about it. Our resentment is not the first arrow of a past hurt. It is the second arrow of replaying that hurt over and over in our minds. The wisdom of this path does not lie in trying to build a magical shield that will stop all of life's first arrows. Such a shield does not exist. The practice is to develop a mind so resilient, spacious, and aware that when a first arrow strikes, we have the wisdom and the presence not to immediately reach for the second. This changes everything. It reframes the entire spiritual path not as a fight against reality, but as a transformation of our relationship with reality. The goal is not to eliminate dukkha from the world, but to cease creating the additional suffering of resistance, aversion, and clinging within our own minds. It means learning to meet the unavoidable pain of life with compassion and courage, rather than with fear and anger. It means learning to enjoy the fleeting moments of happiness with gratitude, without the desperate grasp of attachment. It means learning to relax into the fundamentally uncertain, changing nature of life, finding our peace not in controlling the river, but in learning to flow with it. We now have the diagnosis in its fullness. The dis-ease is dukkha in its obvious, subtle, and background forms. We understand that its primary fuel is our own reaction, the second arrow we shoot into our own hearts. A clear diagnosis is the first step. Now we must turn to the cure. What is the first prescription from the great physician for a mind afflicted by dukkha? How do we begin the process of laying down our bow and arrow? The first step is not complex or esoteric. It is the most simple, fundamental, and readily available practice there is. It is a way of gathering our scattered, anxious minds and bringing them back home from the past and the future into the only place where healing can occur, the present moment. The entry point to this presence, the anchor in the storm of dukkha, is the simple, rhythmic, life-giving reality of the breath. We stand now, diagnosed. We have faced the reality of dukkha, the pervasive dissatisfaction of a life spent at odds with itself. We have seen how our own reactions, the second arrows of fear and resentment, are the true source of our deepest suffering. The diagnosis is clear. The question that hangs in the air is one of profound, practical importance. What is the first dose of medicine? What is the first step on the path toward healing? The answer offered by the great physicians of the mind is not something complex, foreign, or difficult to obtain. The first prescription is something you are already doing in this very moment. It is the simple, humble, and miraculous act of breathing. The breath is the anchor for the ship of the mind, tossed on the stormy sea of thought. A storm will rage, waves will crash, but an anchor does not stop the storm. It simply holds the vessel steady, preventing it from being smashed against the rocks or carried away into the abyss. The breath holds a unique and powerful position in our human experience. It is the bridge between our conscious and unconscious worlds, the meeting point of mind and body. Think about it. You can consciously decide to hold your breath or to breathe faster or slower. Yet, the moment you stop paying attention, it continues on its own, a silent, faithful rhythm that has sustained you every second of your life. This dual nature makes it the perfect tool for meditation. When our mind is lost, as it so often is, In the imaginary realms of the past or the future, ruminating on old regrets, or rehearsing future anxieties, our body is always, without exception, right here, right now, in the present moment. The breath is the thread that connects the wandering mind to the grounded reality of the body. To consciously feel one inhalation is to pull the mind out of the chaos of time and anchor it in the calm harbor of the now. This is not merely a poetic idea, it is a physiological reality. When we are caught in a state of stress, anxiety, or fear, the classic fight or flight response, our sympathetic nervous system takes over. Our heart rate increases, our muscles tense, and our breathing becomes rapid, shallow, and located high in the chest. This is the body preparing for a perceived threat. The profound secret is that this street runs both ways. Just as the mind can trigger this physical stress response, the body can send a signal of safety back to the mind. By intentionally bringing our awareness to the breath and allowing it to become just a little slower, a little deeper, a little more rhythmic, we activate the parasympathetic nervous system. This is often called the rest and digest or tend and befriend system. It is the body's own powerful built-in antidote to stress. When the breath becomes calm and regular, it sends a message directly to the brainstem and the amygdala, the fear center of the brain. The message is simple. You are safe. The threat has passed. In response, the brain stops flooding our system with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. The heart rate begins to slow, the shoulders drop, the jaw unclenches, and the frantic, chattering monkey mind, seeing that the emergency is over, begins to settle down. We have calmed the mind by first calming the body. The practice of using the breath as this anchor is called anapanasati in the Pali language, which simply means mindfulness of breathing. It is deceptively simple. It is not about achieving a special state or having a mystical experience. It is simply about paying attention. I invite you now, just for a moment, to feel it for yourself. You don't need to change your posture, close your eyes, or do anything special. Simply bring your curiosity to the physical sensation of your own breathing. You might choose to place your attention at the tip of your nostrils, feeling the coolness of the air as it enters and the warmth as it leaves. Or you might prefer to rest your attention on your abdomen, feeling the gentle rise on the in-breath and the soft fall on the out-breath. Choose one spot and let your attention rest there, like a butterfly resting on a flower. The most important instruction is this: do not try to control your breath. Your only task is to observe it. Let the body breathe itself. If the breath is shallow, know that it is shallow. If it is deep, know that it is deep. There is no right or wrong way for the breath to be. You are not the breather. You are the witness to the breathing. Now something will happen. It is guaranteed. After a few seconds, or perhaps only one, your mind will wander away. It will be distracted by a sound, a physical sensation, or most likely a thought. A memory, a plan, a worry will hook your attention and carry it away. This is not a mistake. This is not a failure of the practice. This is simply what minds do. This moment, the moment you realize your mind has wandered, is the most important moment of the entire practice. It is a moment of pure mindfulness. In that moment of noticing, you have woken up from the dream of thought. And what do? With infinite gentleness, with the kindness you would show to a small puppy that has wandered off, you simply guide your attention back to your anchor, back to the feeling of the breath. You might have to do this 10 times or 100 times in a single minute. That does not matter. The practice is not in staying on the breath. The practice is in the gentle, patient, non-judgmental act of returning over and over and over again. Each return is a small victory of presence over distraction, a single bicep curl for the muscle of your attention. There is a wonderful Zen story that illustrates this process. The untamed mind is compared to a powerful wild water buffalo. Left to itself, it rampages through the village, destroying the rice paddies and creating chaos and suffering. The farmer, who represents our mindful awareness, wants to tame this buffalo. He knows he cannot overpower it by force, so he gets a strong rope, and this rope represents the breath. he manages to tie one end of the rope to the buffalo's nose and holds firmly to the other end. At first, the buffalo is furious. It still thrashes and pulls, trying to run wild, but it can no longer get very far. It is tethered. The farmer doesn't fight the buffalo, he just holds the rope steadily. Gradually, over time, the buffalo begins to calm down. It realizes its struggle is futile. It learns to walk alongside the farmer. Eventually, the taming is so complete that the farmer can let the rope go completely slack, and the great buffalo will lie down peacefully in the shade at his side. We do not fight our minds into submission. We gently, persistently tether our wild mind to the steady anchor of the breath. We don't eliminate its energy. We simply provide a calm, steady center for it to revolve around until it naturally comes to rest. This simple practice transforms the breath into a refuge, a home that is always available to you, no matter what is happening in the external world. Your boss can be yelling, your children can be screaming, the news can be terrifying, but the anchor of your breath is always here, waiting. In a stressful meeting, you can feel one breath. Lying awake at 3 a.m. with your heart pounding, you can come back to your breath. It costs nothing. It requires no special equipment or location. It is your most portable and faithful companion from your first cry to your final exhalation. It is the ultimate antidote to the feeling of homelessness created by the anxious, wandering mind. It is the doorway back to the present moment, the only place you can ever truly be. Now that we have this anchor, now that we have a tool to steady the ship in the midst of the storm, a new possibility opens up. With the anchor of the breath holding us in the calm waters of the present, we can begin to explore the art of simply being. We can learn to sit and allow the world, both inner and outer, to be exactly as it is, without our constant commentary and interference. Having found the practice of tethering the mind, we are now ready to explore the space that practice creates. We are ready to learn the radical and profound art of simply sitting. This brings us to the very heart of Zen practice, Zazen. Having found our anchor in the breath, we have a tool to steady the ship. But Zazen, the core practice of the Zen tradition, asks us to do something even more radical. It asks us to drop the anchor, stop rowing, and simply sit. To sit in the middle of the ocean of our life, and for a few moments, to do absolutely nothing at all. In a society that worships productivity, that equates busyness with worth, the act of intentional non-doing is perhaps the most revolutionary act we can engage in. Zazen, which literally translates to seated meditation, is this revolutionary act. It is the profound and simple art of being present with what is, without any agenda whatsoever. It is often misunderstood, shrouded in myths of mystical states and empty minds, but at its heart, Zazen is the most ordinary and direct practice imaginable. It is not a technique to get somewhere else. It is the practice of finally arriving right where you already are. Before we explore what Zazen is, it is essential to clear the ground and understand what it is not. The most common and damaging myth is that the goal of meditation is to empty the mind. People will sit, find that their mind is still churning with thoughts, and conclude, I'm no good at this, I can't do it. This is like looking at your heart, seeing that it is beating, and concluding you are failing at being still. The mind's nature is to produce thoughts, just as a cloud's nature is to produce rain. To try and forcibly stop your thoughts is an act of violence against your own nature. It creates tension and frustration, which is just more noise. Zazen does not fight the mind. It creates a container so vast and accepting that the mind's activity is no longer a problem. The second myth is that Zazen is a form of escape, a way to zone out from the problems of the world. In reality, it is the exact opposite. It is a practice of radical engagement. You are not escaping your life. You are turning to face it with unprecedented intimacy. You are sitting with your boredom, your anxiety, your joy, your physical pain, your racing thoughts, all of it. It is a courageous act of turning toward your direct experience rather than running away from it. And finally, Zazen is not merely a relaxation technique. While a sense of calm is often a beautiful byproduct of the practice, it is not the goal. Sometimes Zazen is profoundly uncomfortable. It can be physically painful or emotionally turbulent. The goal is not to feel good. The goal is to be aware. The aim is to wake up to the full spectrum of your life, not just the pleasant parts. So, how does one practice? The instructions are famously simple, focusing on the posture and attitude that we bring to the act of sitting. You can sit on a cushion on the floor, traditionally in a lotus or half-lotus posture, but more practically for most, in a comfortable cross-legged position. The cushion is important because it elevates the hips, allowing the knees to drop lower, creating a stable, triangular base. If sitting on the floor is not accessible, a straight-back chair is perfectly fine. The key is to have your feet flat on the floor, creating that same sense of grounded stability. From this stable base, the spine becomes the central focus. It should be effortlessly erect, not stiff like a soldier at attention, but upright with a sense of dignity, as if a thread is gently pulling the crown of your head toward the sky. It is said that this posture connects heaven and earth through your own body. The hands are typically held in what is called the cosmic mudra. The left hand rests in the palm of the right hand, palms facing up, with the tips of the thumbs lightly touching to form a delicate oval. This mudra is held just below the navel, and it embodies balance, concentration, and unity. Perhaps the most unique aspect of Zazen is the gaze. Unlike many other meditation practices where the eyes are closed, in Zazen, the eyes remain open. They are lowered to a 45-degree angle, with the gaze resting softly and unfocused on the floor a few feet in front of you. The eyes are half open, creating a soft, ambient awareness. The purpose of this is twofold. It prevents the meditator from drifting into dreaminess or drowsiness, and more profoundly, it reinforces the core principle that we are not trying to shut out the world. We are learning to be still and silent right in the midst of it. With the body held in this posture of alert stillness, what do we do with the mind? The simplest instruction is to return to the anchor of the breath. You can count the breaths from 1 to 10 over and over as a way of tethering the mind. Or you can simply feel the sensation of the breath in the abdomen, the center of your being. An even more advanced yet simpler form of Zazen is called Shikantaza, which can be translated as just sitting. In Shikantaza, there is no object of focus at all, not even the breath. You simply sit. You sit with a wide open, alert awareness. Thoughts will arise. You let them come, you let them be, and you let them go. A sound is heard, you simply hear it. A pain arises in your knee, you simply feel it. You do not latch onto any particular experience, nor do you push any experience away. You are like a great, silent mountain, and the thoughts, feelings, and sensations are just the clouds and weather patterns passing by. You remain the mountain. It is an act of profound trust in awareness itself. Inevitably, anyone who practices Zazen will meet 3 challenging visitors. The first is physical pain. Your back will ache, your knees will scream. The instruction is to first investigate the pain with curiosity. Is it just discomfort, or is it a signal of genuine injury? You learn the difference. You learn to sit with the discomfort, to breathe into it, to observe it as pure sensation, without the story of my aching knee. The second visitor is boredom. In our world of constant entertainment, the mind rebels against the lack of stimulation. It will scream, "This is pointless. I could be doing something else." Boredom is a gateway. To stay with it is to exhaust the mind's demand for entertainment, allowing a deeper stillness to emerge. The third visitor, of course, is the storm of thoughts. Often, when we first sit in silence, the mind becomes louder than ever before. This is because we have finally stopped distracting it. We are simply seeing what it has been doing all along. The practice, as always, is not to fight the storm, but to let it rage. You remain the silent, unmoving eye of the hurricane. This leads to the most central, paradoxical, and liberating insight of Zen. What is the purpose of Zazen? The purpose of Zazen is Zazen. We are not sitting in order to get something not peace, not enlightenment, not better health. To have a goal is to place happiness in the future. which is the fundamental habit of the ego. Zazen is a practice of letting go of the future entirely. The moment you are sitting on the cushion, with your spine erect and your gaze lowered, you have already arrived. This is it. There is nothing more to achieve. There is a classic Zen story where a student asks a master, "What have you gained from all your years of meditation?" The master replies, "Absolutely nothing." The student is shocked. The master smiles and continues, "But let me tell you what I have lost. I have lost my anger, my anxiety, my insecurity, and my fear of death." In another famous exchange, when asked to describe the esoteric truth of his practice, the master simply said, "When I am hungry, I eat. When I am tired, I sleep." The point is that Zazen dissolves the layer of commentary, judgment, and abstraction that we place between ourselves and reality. When you are sitting, you are just sitting. When you are eating, you are just eating. You are returned to a state of direct, unmediated, and profoundly simple experience. This practice of radical non-doing, of seeking no goal, has a paradoxical effect. By ceasing our relentless striving, we allow a natural state of balance and clarity to emerge. By sitting still in the present, we find that the chains of the past and the anxieties of the future begin to lose their power over us. The practice of Zazen, week after week, moment after moment, systematically gathers our entire being out of the scattered timelines of regret and worry and places it squarely in the only location where life is actually happening, where healing is possible, and where true peace can ever be found. This singular, powerful, and ever-available location is the present moment. The practice of Zazen, the radical act of just sitting, does not transport us to some otherworldly dimension. Its power lies in the fact that it does the opposite. It brings us, with unwavering precision, to the only time and place where reality can ever be found. It brings us here. It brings us now. This location, the present moment, is the singular door through which all of life passes. Yet, it is the one place where we are so rarely at home. Ask yourself right now, in this moment, where is your mind? Your body is here, listening to these words. But is your mind here with it? Or is it replaying an argument from this morning? Is it worrying about a meeting scheduled for tomorrow? Is it lost in a daydream of a past vacation or a future success? For most of us, most of the time, our consciousness is living as a ghost in the haunted house of the past, or as a nervous scout in the imaginary terrain of the future. We are anywhere but here. Let us examine these two phantom realms where we spend so much of our lives. First, the past. Where does the past exist? It does not exist in the world. You cannot visit yesterday. You cannot hold it, touch it, or change it. The past exists in only one place, as a pattern of memory, a thought, form, arising in the mind in this present moment. When we say we are living in the past, what we are actually doing is prioritizing a ghost over reality. We are sitting in the vibrant living room of the present, but we have turned our full attention to a flickering, black and white movie of a time that is gone forever. This compulsive engagement with the ghosts of memory is the source of all regret, resentment, guilt, and grievance. It is an exhausting and fruitless haunting. Then there is the future. Where is the future? Like the past, it has no independent existence. It is a mental projection, a fantasy, a series of what-if scenarios being created by your mind right now. The future is always just a concept. When it actually arrives, it doesn't arrive as the future. It arrives as another present moment. To live in a state of anxiety is to be constantly trying to solve problems that do not yet exist, in a time that has not yet come. You are fighting phantoms in a phantom land. Anxiety is the friction caused by trying to control a future that is, by its very nature, uncontrollable and unknown. We sacrifice the peace that is available now for the imagined security of a time that will never arrive in the form we predict. The only reality, the only door to life, is the now. It is the eternal stage upon which the memories of the past and the projections of the future play their parts. All of our power resides here, and only here. You cannot act yesterday. You cannot act tomorrow. You can only act, think, speak, love, create, and heal in this present moment. To be lost in thought about another time is to abdicate your power. It is to abandon the throne of your own life to wander in a kingdom of illusions. When we are not present, our life ceases to be a reality, to be lived, and becomes a problem to be solved. We are always trying to fix the past or manage the future, and we miss the simple, profound, and often beautiful reality of what is unfolding right in front of us. The art of returning to this place of power is the essence of what we call mindfulness. Mindfulness is not a complicated state to be achieved. It is the simple, practical skill of remembering to come home. The most widely used definition describes it as paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Let's unpack that. On purpose means it is an intentional act. We are choosing to bring our awareness back from its wandering. In the present moment means the destination is always right here. And non-judgmentally is the crucial element that makes it a practice of healing and compassion. When you notice your mind has wandered into a worry about the future, you do not scold yourself. You do not say, "I'm a terrible meditator, I can't stay focused." This is just more judgment, more noise. Instead, you treat the wandering mind with the kindness you might show a lost child. You gently take it by the hand and say, "I see you're over there. Let's come back home now." And you guide it back to the anchor of the breath or the sensations in your body. This gentle, non-judgmental return is the heart of the practice. There is a magnificent Zen story that illustrates this power of the present with breathtaking clarity. A person is walking in the mountains and suddenly finds themselves being chased by a ferocious tiger. They run as fast as they can to the edge of a cliff. With no other escape, they grab onto a thick vine and swing down over the precipice. As they hang there, clinging for life, they look down and see another tiger, snarling and waiting for them on the ground below. They are trapped. The tiger of the past is behind them. The tiger of the future is below them. Then, out of the corner of their eye, they see two small mice, one white and one black, emerge from a crevice in the cliff. The mice begin to systematically gnaw on the vine the person is clinging to. The white mouse and the black mouse are day and night. Time is running out. The situation is completely, utterly hopeless. In this moment of total peril, facing certain death from above and below, the person notices something. Growing from the cliff face, just within reach, is a single wild strawberry, glistening and perfectly ripe. They reach out, pluck the strawberry, put it in their mouth, and savor it. The story ends with a single line: "How sweet it tasted." This is the human condition. We are all hanging from that vine. The tiger of the past are regrets, our traumas, our histories always at our back. The tiger of the future, our fears, our anxieties, our inevitable deaths always waiting below. And the mice of time are always gnawing away at our life. In the face of this, we have a choice. We can spend our precious, fleeting moments fixated on the tigers, paralyzed by fear and despair. Or we can notice the strawberry. The strawberry is the sweetness of the present moment. It is the warmth of the sun on your skin, the taste of your morning coffee, the sound of a loved one's laugh, the simple sensation of your own breath moving in and out of your body. The sweetness is always available, but we can only taste it when we are willing to withdraw our attention from the terrifying but ultimately illusory tigers of the past and future. This is not just a practice for the meditation cushion. The true path is to bring this awareness into the fabric of your daily life. You can practice mindful eating. Instead of mindlessly consuming your food while scrolling on your phone, take just the first 3 bites of your next meal with your full attention. Notice the colors on the plate. Smell the aromas. Feel the texture in your mouth. Taste the complex flavors. You might discover you haven't truly tasted your food in years. You can practice mindful walking. Feel the solid ground beneath your feet. Notice the subtle shift of weight from heel to toe. Feel the air on your skin and the movement of your body through space. The purpose is not just to get to your destination, The walking itself becomes the destination. You can practice mindful listening. The next time you are in a conversation, truly listen. Resist the urge to formulate your reply while the other person is speaking. Offer them the gift of your complete, undivided presence. These simple acts infuse the mundane with a sense of the sacred. They are gateways back to the only reality we ever have. When you consistently practice returning to the present moment, something remarkable begins to happen. You start to notice the stream of thoughts flowing by without automatically identifying with them. You are standing on the bank of the river rather than being swept away by its current. You are here, present and aware, and the thoughts are over there, arising and passing away like clouds in the sky. This creates a space, a gap between the thinker and the thought. And in this space, a profound realization dawns. You begin to see, with undeniable clarity, that you are not the thoughts. You are not the anxiety. You are not the story. You are the silent, aware presence that is witnessing it all. This insight is the dawn of true freedom, and it leads us to our next discovery, the liberation of becoming the observer. As we learn to anchor ourselves in the harbor of the present moment, a monumental shift in perspective begins to occur. It is perhaps the most crucial discovery on the path of inner freedom. We begin to realize, in our own direct experience, that we are not the chaotic contents of our minds, but rather the silent, aware space in which those contents arise and pass away. This is the profound shift from being an actor lost in the drama of your life to becoming the calm and compassionate audience watching the play unfold. In our normal state of consciousness, we are completely fused with our mental and emotional activity. This is the human default. A thought appears in the mind, such as I am not good enough, and we don't experience it as a transient neurological event. We experience it as a fundamental truth, a core definition of who we are. A wave of anger washes through us, and we declare, I am angry, collapsing our entire vast identity into that single, temporary, emotional state. This cognitive fusion is the mechanism that gives our thoughts and emotions their power over us. We are welded to them, and so we are thrown about by their every whim. The practice of becoming the observer is the antidote to this fusion. It is the art of gently, deliberately creating space. It is learning to see your thoughts as thoughts, your emotions as emotions, and your sensations as sensations. They are not you, and they are not necessarily an accurate reflection of reality. They are simply internal weather patterns, passing events in consciousness. The most powerful invitation is this: consider that you are not the anger. You are the space that holds the anger. Think of your awareness as a vast, empty room. Emotions and thoughts are like pieces of furniture that are moved into the room. Sometimes the room is filled with beautiful, comfortable furniture joy, love, excitement. At other times, it's filled with ugly, painful furniture fear, jealousy, grief. Through it all, the room itself remains unchanged. Its walls are not damaged by the ugly furniture. Its nature is not altered by the beautiful furniture. You are the room, not the furniture. Your awareness is inherently pure, spacious, and unharmed by whatever passes through it. The most classic and powerful metaphor for this relationship is that of the sky and the clouds. Your true nature, your fundamental awareness, is like the sky open, boundless, clear, and ever-present. Your thoughts and emotions are like the clouds, or more accurately, like the weather. Sometimes, the weather of your mind is clear and sunny, with just a few light, wispy clouds of pleasant thoughts floating by. At other times, dark, heavy storm clouds gather a mood of anger, a squall of anxiety, a thick, persistent fog of depression. On those stormy days, the sky can seem to disappear entirely. All we can see and feel is the turbulence and the darkness. But we know with absolute certainty that beyond the clouds, the sky remains. It has not gone anywhere. It is not stained by the soot of the storm clouds or torn by the lightning. The storm is a temporary event happening within the sky. It is not the sky itself. Our great mistake, the source of so much of our suffering, is that when the weather of our mind is stormy, We forget we are the sky and believe we are the storm. The practice of becoming the observer is the ongoing practice of remembering, I am the sky. The weather is just passing through. This may sound like a beautiful poetic idea, but it can be cultivated through very practical, simple techniques. One of the most effective is the simple act of labeling. When you notice you are caught in a strong mental or emotional pattern, you can gently, mentally, apply a label to it. For instance, you might be caught in a spiral of thoughts about an upcoming presentation. Your heart is pounding, and your mind is full of catastrophic what-if scenarios. Instead of being carried away by the torrent, you can pause, take a breath, and inwardly note, this is worry. This is the thought of worrying, or simply worrying. If you feel a surge of irritation at someone, you can note, anger. I am aware of the feeling of anger arising. This simple act is revolutionary. It immediately shifts you from being the subject of the experience to being the objectifying witness of it. You are no longer the worry. You are the one who is noticing the worry. You have created a sliver of space, and in that space lies freedom. You can even bring a sense of lightheartedness to it. You can say to your mind, thank you for that incredibly detailed disaster movie you just played for me. I appreciate your creative efforts. This treats the mind not as an enemy, but as a well-meaning but overactive friend, and it instantly breaks the hypnotic spell of its stories. Imagine yourself sitting peacefully on the grassy bank of a wide flowing river. This river is your stream of consciousness. Your only task is to sit and watch what floats by. You do not have to do anything. You just observe. Sometimes a beautiful, perfect lotus blossom floats past a pleasant memory, a happy thought. Sometimes a rough, tangled log comes bumping along a difficult problem, a painful feeling. Sometimes the water is murky and brown with confusion. Sometimes it is crystal clear. Sometimes a dead animal floats by, representing an old trauma or deep grief. As the observer on the bank, your job is not to jump into the river to try and grab the beautiful flower and keep it forever. That is clinging. Your job is not to use a big stick to try and push away the ugly log. That is aversion. Your job is not to try and build a dam to stop the flow or to dig a channel to speed it up. Your job is to simply watch with patient and accepting awareness as everything arises in the distance, floats past you, and eventually disappears downstream. You trust the river's flow. This is the posture of the observer self. As you practice this kind of detached observation, day after day, you begin to perceive the true nature of your thoughts. You see for yourself that they are utterly impermanent. No thought has ever lasted. They come and they go. You see that they are insubstantial. A thought has no weight, no real substance. It is a flicker of energy. And you see that they are largely impersonal. They often arise unbidden, generated automatically by years of conditioning, not by some central you who is consciously choosing them. This is the direct experiential insight into what Buddhism calls shunyata, or emptiness. Your thoughts are empty of any solid, separate, or lasting reality. To see this is to be liberated from their tyranny. You would not build your house upon a passing cloud, so why would you build your identity upon a passing thought? This practice of being the sky that allows the clouds, of being the witness on the riverbank, requires a very particular quality of mind, a specific attitude. It is an attitude that runs counter to our normal, deeply ingrained habits. We are experts. Our minds are conditioned to immediately categorize, judge, and analyze everything based on our vast library of past experiences. We see a situation and instantly think, this is good, this is bad, I know what this is. This expert mind is what keeps us trapped in old patterns. To truly observe, to see things as they are without the filter of our past, we must cultivate a different kind of mind. We must cultivate a mind that is fresh, open, curious, and willing to see the world as if for the very first time. This special, precious quality of mind has a name in Zen. It is called Shoshin, the beginner's mind. To stand on the riverbank and witness the stream of our thoughts without being swept away, to be the vast sky that allows the weather of our emotions to pass without being stained, requires a very particular quality of mind. It requires an attitude that runs directly counter to the habits we have spent a lifetime building. Our modern world values expertise. We are rewarded for what we know, for our accumulated knowledge, for our ability to analyze, categorize, and provide answers. We build our identities around being an expert in our field, an expert on politics, or even an expert on ourselves. But this expert mind, while useful for performing tasks, can become a prison. It closes us off from the raw, unmediated mystery of life itself. Zen has a term for the antidote to this prison. It is Shoshin, which translates as beginner's mind. Shoshin is the practice of meeting every moment, every person, and every experience as if for the very first time. It is the wisdom of putting down what you think you know in order to truly see what is. The expert mind is a mind that no longer sees the world. It sees only its own concepts and labels projected onto the world. The expert looks at a tree and thinks, oak, deciduous, quercus robur. The beginner sees a magnificent, living being, a universe of texture in its bark, a dance of light in its leaves, a silent history in its rings. The expert mind meets a new person and immediately sorts them into a box based on their appearance, their job, or their accent. This is a conservative. This is an artist. This is someone I can't trust. These labels, formed from past experiences, prevent any genuine connection from happening. The expert mind listens to a piece of music and thinks, Beethoven's Fifth, the famous short, long motif representing fate knocking at the door. It is listening to its memory of the music, not the vibrant, living sound hitting the eardrum in this moment. The expert mind is certain, and in its certainty, it is closed. It is a full cup. Its world is small, predictable, and ultimately lifeless. It has traded the infinite wonder of reality for the dead security of its own ideas. There is a famous Zen story that serves as the perfect illustration of this truth. A prominent university professor, a man renowned for his intellect and knowledge, came to visit a wise old Zen master named Nanin to inquire about the nature of Zen. The professor arrived and immediately began to speak, showcasing his own profound understanding of philosophy and religion, explaining all the theories he had read about Zen. He talked and talked, filling the small room with his intellectual achievements. After some time, Nanin interrupted him and said, "Let us have some tea." The master began to prepare the tea with graceful, deliberate movements. He placed a cup before the learned professor and began to pour. He filled the cup to the brim, and then he kept pouring. Tea spilled out of the cup, running down its sides and forming a puddle on the table. The professor watched, growing more and more agitated. Finally, he could not contain himself any longer and burst out, "Stop! The cup is overfull. No more will go in." Nanin calmly stopped pouring, looked at the professor and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This story is a direct teaching. The professor's mind is the full cup. He did not come to learn. He came to have his existing knowledge confirmed and to add Zen as another trophy to his intellectual collection. He wanted to understand Zen by fitting it into the boxes he had already built. Nan, in simple, compassionate action, showed him the impossibility of this approach. True seeing, true understanding, does not come from adding more information to a mind that is already full. It comes from the courage to empty it. It requires the humility to put down our expertise, our certainties, our well-polished opinions, and to meet reality with a fresh, open, and curious mind. It requires the wisdom of "I don't know." In our culture, "I don't know" is often seen as a sign of weakness, but in the practice of Shoshin, "I don't know" is a password that unlocks the door to reality. When you can honestly say, "I don't know," you have silenced the arrogant expert in your head. You have created an empty space, a stillness into which something new can enter. When you admit you don't know what your partner is going to say, you stop finishing their sentences and you start truly listening to them. When you admit you don't know what a flower really is, beyond its label, you can become captivated by its impossible color and intricate design. I don't know is the beginner's mantra. It is the end of assumption and the beginning of discovery. This is not just a philosophical idea. It is a practice you can bring into the most ordinary moments of your life. Take a familiar object, something you see every day, like a spoon. For just 1 minute, look at that spoon with beginner's mind. Forget the word spoon. See it as a pure shape. Notice the curve of the bowl, the slimness of the handle. See how the light reflects off its surface, creating a tiny, distorted world in its reflection. Feel its weight in your hand, its coolness against your skin. In this moment, the spoon is no longer a mundane tool. It is a sculpture, a mystery, a thing of wonder. You can do this with anything. Listen to the sound of the rain with beginner's ears without the story of a dreary day. Taste a single raisin with the intense curiosity of a child who has never encountered such a thing before. This practice breaks the trance of automaticity that keeps us asleep to our own lives. It reveals that the world is not boring. We have just been looking at it with bored, expert minds. The miracle is always here, waiting for us to empty our cup so that we can see it. The great Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki summarized this entire teaching in one profound statement. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. The expert mind lives on a narrow, well-trodden path. It knows where the path leads because it has walked it 1,000 times. There are no surprises, but the beginner's mind stands at the edge of a vast open field. Any direction is possible, any discovery can be made. This is the mind of the great artist who sees a masterpiece in a block of stone. It is the mind of the scientist who looks at the data everyone else has seen and asks a new question, leading to a breakthrough. It is the mind we all had as children, when the world was a place of infinite magic and fascination. Shoshin is the practice of returning to that open field, of allowing our lives to be a constant process of renewal. This empty cup, this wide open field of the beginner's mind, is not just a way to live a more joyful and creative life. It is also an essential preparation for the deeper challenges of the Zen path. Sometimes, the practice requires us to confront questions that our logical, expert mind cannot possibly answer. It uses tools that are specifically designed to short-circuit our normal way of thinking, to break open the prison of our intellect. These tools demand an empty mind. They demand that we abandon all our preconceived notions and leap into the abyss of not knowing. The most famous of these tools is the koan, the paradoxical riddle that cannot be solved, but can only be understood. To approach a koan with a full cup is to be utterly defeated. But to approach it with a spacious, humble curiosity of Shoshin is to open ourselves to a form of wisdom that lies beyond the reach of words. With our cup empty, with the open and curious attitude of the beginner's mind, we are now prepared to approach one of the most powerful and enigmatic tools in the Zen tradition. It is a practice designed not to inform the intellect, but to break it. It is a direct assault on the prison of logical thought, a spiritual device engineered to push the rational mind to its absolute limit, and then to push it over the edge. This tool is the koan. A koan is often presented as a question, a short story, or a single statement given by a Zen master to a student. But it is not a riddle to be solved, a paradox to be figured out, or a philosophical proposition to be debated. It is a living encounter, a spiritual scalpel designed to cut through the layers of conceptual thought and reveal the direct, unmediated reality that lies beneath. To the rational mind, a koan sounds like nonsense. Perhaps the most famous is the one created by the great Zen master Hakuin Ekaku. We all know the sound of two hands clapping. Tell me, what is the sound of one hand? Another classic is, what was your original face? The face you had before your mother and father were born. And then there is the story of the monk who asked Master Zhaozhou, does a dog have Buddha nature? To which Zhaozhou replied with a single sharp word, mu, which means no, or not, or nothingness. The student is then instructed to find the meaning of mu. A Zen master might command a student, If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. These are not questions seeking clever answers. Any attempt to respond with logic or philosophy is immediately rejected, often with a sharp word or even a strike from the master's stick. The koan is not interested in what you think. It is a gateway to what you are. The process of working with a koan is one of intense, focused struggle. The student is instructed to become one with the question. They must pour their entire being into it, day and night. When walking, they walk with mu. When eating, they eat with mu. The mind's first and most powerful instinct is to attack the koan with the intellect. It tries to analyze it, to find a loophole, to come up with a clever metaphor or a satisfying explanation. Ah, the sound of one hand is the sound of the wind in the pines. My original face is the universe. The student brings these answers to the master, full of pride, and is utterly rejected. The answer is not in your head. The answer is not an idea. This process of presenting answers and being rejected over and over is essential. It is designed to create a state of profound existential doubt, what is called the great doubt. The student's entire conceptual world, their reliance on logic and reason, is being systematically dismantled. They are being led to a place where their intellect is useless. The Zen masters describe this as bringing the student to the Great Wall of Iron, the Silver Mountain. It is a place of total impasse. There is no way to go forward with thought, no way to go back to their previous certainty. The mind has been given a bone with no meat on it, and it is chewed until its teeth are broken. It is a state of immense frustration, but it is a sacred frustration. It is the darkness before the dawn. For when the intellect finally gives up, when it exhausts itself in its frantic search for a conceptual answer and collapses into a state of pure not knowing, a space is created. And into this silent, open space, a new kind of knowing can flash into being. This is the experience of Kensho or Satori, sudden, direct insight into one's true nature and the nature of reality. It is not an idea about reality, it is the direct experience of reality itself, unfiltered by the conceptual mind. There are countless stories of these breakthrough moments. A monk had been struggling with the koan mu for years. He was at his wit's end, completely absorbed in the great doubt. His mind was a taut drum, stretched to its limit. One morning, his duties required him to sweep the monastery garden. As he swept, his mind was still completely filled with mu. He wasn't thinking about sweeping, he was just sweeping. His broom flicked a small pebble from the path, and it flew through the air, striking a hollow stalk of bamboo with a sharp, clear talk. In that instant, the sound shattered his consciousness. The barrier between himself and the sound, between the sound and the bamboo, between the bamboo and the entire universe, between the universe and mu, completely dissolved. He was not a man hearing a sound. He was the sound. He was everything. He burst into laughter, his struggle finally over. He was awakened. The koan did not provide the answer. The koan created the state of mind, the ripeness, that allowed the simple sound of a pebble hitting bamboo to be the catalyst for a total transformation of consciousness. What the koan demonstrates so powerfully is the inherent limitation of language and logic. Our language is, by its very nature, dualistic. It works by chopping the seamless reality into pieces. It creates a world of subjects and objects, of me here and the world out there. It creates good and bad, right and wrong, this and that. But the ultimate nature of reality, from the Zen perspective, is non-dual. It is a single, indivisible, interconnected whole. A koan is a non-dual tool designed to break the dualistic machine of the mind. The sound of one hand points to a reality where the very distinction between a clapper and that which is clapped does not exist. It points to a sound that is not separate from silence. Your original face before your parents were born points to your true identity, which exists prior to the conceptual labels of me and mine that are given to you by your family and society. It asks you to find yourself before the story of you was ever written. For those of us not engaged in formal koan study in a monastery, this may seem like an abstract and distant practice. But in truth, Life itself constantly presents us with koans. A sudden, unexpected loss can be a koan. A moment of overwhelming, inexplicable joy can be a koan. A diagnosis, a betrayal, a moment of profound confusion, these are life's great, non-logical questions. Our usual response is to immediately try to solve them with our intellect, to find a reason, to create a story that makes us feel comfortable again. This happened for a reason. Everything will be okay. We rush to fill the uncomfortable space of not knowing. The Zen approach, informed by the spirit of koan practice, is to do the opposite. It is to have the courage to live with the question, to allow the not knowing to be there, to let the great doubt do its work on us, softening the hard shell of our certainty, breaking down our rigid ideas about how life is supposed to be, and opening us up to a deeper, more intuitive wisdom that can only arise from a place of profound inner silence. The ultimate purpose of the koan, then, is to facilitate the collapse of the dualistic mind, the mind that sees everything as separate. When that wall of separation, the wall between I and other, between subject and object, between inside and outside, finally crumbles, what is left? What do we see in that moment of awakened clarity? We see a world not of separate, competing things, but of infinite, intricate, and profound interconnectedness. We see that the wave is not separate from the ocean. We see that the leaf is not separate from the sunlight that feeds it. We see that the self is not separate from the universe that breathes it. This direct insight into the interconnected, interwoven fabric of reality is where the path of wisdom leads us next. We have used the koan to break our false logic, and now we can begin to explore the true logic of the cosmos, the beautiful, liberating truth of emptiness and interdependence. The koan, in its ferocious compassion, shatters the shell of our logical mind. It breaks down the dualistic walls that we have built to make sense of the world, the walls that separate me from you, this from that, and inside from outside. When these walls crumble, we are left standing in a vast, open landscape, and we begin to perceive the world not as a collection of separate, solid objects, but as a single, seamless, and breathtakingly intricate dance. This perception is the doorway to one of the most profound and yet most frequently misunderstood concepts in all of Eastern philosophy. Shunyata, a Sanskrit word most often translated as emptiness. Immediately, this word can conjure a sense of unease. It sounds like nihilism, like a cold, dark void, a statement that nothing matters and nothing is real. But this is a profound misinterpretation. The truth of emptiness is not a bleak negation of life. It is a joyful affirmation of its absolute and total interconnectedness. Emptiness, in the Buddhist sense, does not mean nothingness. It means empty of a separate, independent self. It is the teaching that nothing in the entire cosmos exists on its own, by its own power. Everything comes into being only in relationship to everything else. This is the great principle of interdependence, or dependent origination. To say that something is empty is to say that it is full of the entire universe. Let us make this tangible with a simple object, a single sheet of paper. Let us look deeply at this piece of paper. If we ask, what is this? The simple answer is paper. But that is the answer of the expert mind. Let us look with the beginner's mind. To be a piece of paper, there must first be a tree. But a tree cannot grow without the non-tree elements. So, if we look deeply into the paper, we can see the sunshine, without which the tree could not perform photosynthesis. The sunshine is in the paper. We can see a cloud floating in the sky. Without the cloud, there is no rain to nourish the tree. So the cloud is in the paper. We can see the soil, rich with minerals and microorganisms that nurtured the tree's roots. The earth is in the paper. Looking further, we can see the logger who cut the tree down. We can see his parents, who gave him life. We can see the farmer who grew the wheat for the bread he ate for breakfast, and the baker who made the loaf. We can see the steelworkers who forged the metal for his saw. We can see the whole economy, the entire chain of human action and history. All of that is present right here in this sheet of paper. If we were to take out the sunshine, take out the cloud, take out the logger, take out the soil, what would be left? There would be no paper at all. The paper, therefore, is empty of being only a piece of paper. It is full of everything we might call non-paper. It is, in its essence, a manifestation of the entire cosmos. Now, let us turn this powerful lens of inquiry upon ourselves. We have this strong feeling of being a me, a separate, solid, independent self, who is the author of my thoughts and the captain of my ship. But is this true? Let's look deeply at this me. Here is my hand. This hand exists because my mother and father came together. Their life, their love, their DNA is in every single cell of this hand. My parents are physically present in me right now. I ate a meal a few hours ago. That food, the plants, the animals was made of sunlight, water, and earth. The energy of the sun is at this very moment being transformed into the energy that allows me to think and speak. So the sun, the earth, and the rain are in me. The farmer who grew the food and the truck driver who transported it are also part of the chain that sustains me. Their work is in me. The air I am breathing in this instant becomes part of my blood, part of my body. The atmosphere of the planet is not separate from me. It is flowing through me, sustaining me from second to second. The ideas that form my mind, the language I am speaking these, came from my family, my teachers, my culture, from thousands of years of human history. Everything I think I am is a product of countless non-me elements. If we were to remove my parents, my food, the air, the water, my culture, and all the people who have influenced me, what would be left of this me? Like the paper, there would be nothing left at all. I am empty of a separate self. I am a temporary, beautiful manifestation of the entire universe. The Zen tradition uses the metaphor of the wave and the ocean to illuminate this truth. Imagine a wave rising up from the sea. It has a birth and a death. It has a unique shape, a form, an identity. It can be a big wave or a small wave. From its own perspective, it might feel quite separate from all the other waves. It might feel proud of its impressive height or insecure about its smallness. It might look at the shore ahead and feel a deep terror of its own impending end, the moment it will crash and cease to be a wave. This is the perspective of the ego, the separate self. But if that wave had the wisdom to look deeply into its own nature, it would realize that it is not, and has never been, separate from the ocean. Its substance is water. It is not in the ocean. It is the ocean. It was never truly born from somewhere else, and it will never truly die and disappear. It is simply the great water of the ocean, rising up in a particular form for a short time before returning to the formless. The wave loses its fear of death. The moment it realizes its true identity is the ocean. We are that wave. We are caught in the drama of our temporary form, forgetting that our true nature is the vast, timeless, and indestructible ocean of life itself. To realize this, to truly feel this interconnectedness in your bones, is to transform your entire relationship with the world. It is the soil from which true compassion, or karuna, naturally grows. When the illusion of the separate self dissolves, the boundary between my happiness and your happiness, my suffering and your suffering, also dissolves. It is no longer a moral imperative to be nice to others. It becomes a simple matter of fact. Harming you is harming myself. Helping you is helping myself. Compassion is no longer an act of pity, which comes from a place of separation. I, the helper, am helping you, the one in need. Instead, it becomes a spontaneous, intelligent response, like your left hand immediately coming to the aid of your right hand if it gets burned. The left hand doesn't have a philosophical debate about whether it should help the right hand. It just helps because it knows, on a cellular level, that they are part of one and the same body. When we see the world through the eyes of emptiness and interdependence, we realize we are all part of one body, one living system. We have seen then that all things, including ourselves, are empty of a separate, solid self. We have seen that we are like a wave, and our true, boundless nature is the ocean. This inevitably leads us to a more focused and personal investigation. If this feeling of being a solid separate I is an illusion, then what is the reality of my own moment-to-moment experience? What is this self that feels so real, but which, under examination, seems to disappear into a web of interconnected causes and conditions? The Buddha took this inquiry to its ultimate conclusion in one of his most central, radical, and liberating teachings. It is a direct look into the very heart of our identity. This is the teaching of anatta, the doctrine of no self. Our journey into the heart of reality, guided by the principle of emptiness, has shown us that nothing exists in isolation. We have seen that we are not a separate self, but a temporary manifestation of the entire cosmos, like a wave on the ocean. This liberating insight is supported by two other cornerstones of Buddhist thought, two universal truths about the nature of all phenomena, known as the marks of existence. We have already encountered the first, dukkha, the inherent dissatisfaction that comes from friction with reality. Now, we turn to the two truths that lie at the very root of that friction. Anicca, the truth of impermanence, and anatta, the truth of no self. To understand these is not to embrace a bleak or depressing worldview, but to find the keys that unlock the prison of our own suffering. Anicca, or impermanence, is the fundamental law that everything is in a constant state of flux. Nothing is static. Nothing is permanent. Everything that arises will, in time, pass away. This is not a complex philosophy, but an observable fact. We see it in the great slow cycles of nature, mountains rising and eroding, stars being born and dying in cosmic dust, empires rising to glory and crumbling to ruin. We see it in the shorter cycles of our own lives. Our bodies grow from infancy to youth to old age. Relationships begin, evolve, and end. Careers flourish and then fade. And we see it in the microsecond flux of our own minds. A thought appears unbidden. It stays for a moment and then vanishes, replaced by another. An emotional flash of joy, a pang of sadness surges through us and then subsides. The mind, the body, and the world are not a collection of solid nouns, but a torrent of flowing verbs. The truth of impermanence itself is neutral. It is simply the way things are. The suffering, the dukkha, does not come from the fact of change, but from our resistance to it. The ego, in its desperate search for security, wants to build a permanent home on ground that is fundamentally shifting. It wants to freeze the river, to hold on to pleasant experiences forever, and to push away unpleasant ones indefinitely. This is a battle we are destined to lose, and the struggle itself is exhausting. We cling to our youth, our health, our happy moments, and our clinging creates anxiety. We resist loss, change, and death, and our resistance creates fear and grief. We are trying to grasp the wind, and our clenched fist is always empty. There is a wise Taoist story that perfectly illustrates the folly of labeling our ever-changing circumstances as fixedly good or bad. An old farmer had a prized stallion. One day the horse ran away. All his neighbors came to console him on his bad luck. The farmer simply replied, "Bad luck? Good luck? Who knows?" A week later, the horse returned, leading a herd of wild horses with it. The neighbors rushed over to congratulate him on his good luck. The farmer just shrugged and said, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" The next day, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown off and broke his leg. The neighbors again offered their sympathy for this terrible stroke of bad luck. The farmer replied, "Bad luck? Good luck? Who knows?" A few weeks later, the emperor's army marched into the village, conscripting every able-bodied young man for a war from which few would return. The farmer's son, because of his broken leg, was spared. This story shows us the futility of clinging to any single outcome or judgment. Life is a ceaseless flow of events, and their meaning is never fixed. To embrace impermanence is to let go of this rigid need to label and control, and to instead cultivate a resilient and open-hearted curiosity about what might happen next. It also makes the present moment infinitely precious. We can truly savor the sweetness of the strawberry, the warmth of a loved one's hand, precisely because we know it is a fleeting gift. This universal law of impermanence leads directly to the most radical and challenging insight of the Buddha's teaching, anatta, or no self. The logic is simple and ruthless. If everything is constantly changing, if everything is in a state of perpetual flux, then where can a permanent, unchanging solid self or soul possibly reside? The teaching of anatta is the ultimate conclusion of impermanence applied to our own being. It is the declaration that if you look deeply enough inside yourself, you will not find a fixed, independent, continuous I at the center of it all. This can be a deeply unsettling idea for the ego, which is, by definition, the belief in such a self. So let us investigate it gently. Who are you? Are you your body? Your body is a collection of cells that is in constant change. Scientists say that nearly every cell in your body is replaced over the course of 7 to 10 years. The body you have now is not the body you had as a child, so you cannot be your body. Are you your mind? Which mind? Your mind is a torrent of ever-changing thoughts, beliefs, opinions, moods, and emotions. The you that was a passionate teenager with one set of beliefs is not the same as the you who is a middle-aged adult with another. Your mind is a process, not a thing. The Buddha analyzed our experience of a self and found that it was composed of 5 constantly changing processes or aggregates: our physical form, our feelings, our perceptions, our mental formations like thoughts and intentions, and our consciousness itself. There is no thing behind these processes that is having the experience. The processes themselves, happening in concert, are the experience. We are not a noun, we are a verb. We are not a static entity. We are a dynamic, flowing pattern. There is no little conductor in the orchestra pit of your mind. There is just the music playing. This teaching of no self can sound terrifying, as if it is erasing our existence. But it is the exact opposite. It is a profound liberation from the heaviest burden we carry, the burden of me. When you believe you are a solid, separate self, you have to spend your entire life defending it, protecting it, and enhancing it. When you realize this self is a fluid process, there is suddenly much less to defend. The sting of criticism lessens because who is this me that is being criticized? The fever of ambition cools because who is this me that needs to achieve something to be whole? Pride and shame, 2 sides of the same coin of self-importance, begin to lose their power. Pride is the ego's identification with a successful outcome. Shame is the ego's identification with a failure. When you see that both success and failure are the impersonal results of countless interdependent causes and conditions, you can meet both with a greater sense of equanimity. Furthermore, if you are not a fixed thing, you are not trapped, you are not an anxious person, you are a process through which the energy of anxiety is currently flowing. Because you are not fixed, you have an infinite capacity for change, growth, and freedom. Impermanence and no self are 2 sides of the same coin. The universe is a great, unceasing river, and this is anicca. You are not a solid rock standing in the river, resisting the flow. You are the river. This is anatta. To realize this, to feel this in your bones, is to stop fighting with the current of life and to become the current itself. It is the end of the great struggle between the self and the world, because the self and the world are seen to be one and the same dance. This realization brings us to a new and vital question. If there is no fixed, controlling ego at the center of our being, and if the wisest path is to flow with the river of impermanence, then how are we to act in the world? If we abandon our white-knuckle grip on outcomes, if we stop trying to force the world to bend to our will, what takes the place of all that striving? Does this lead to a state of passive resignation? The wisdom of the East says no. It leads to a different kind of action altogether. It leads to a state of being where our actions are spontaneous, intelligent, and perfectly aligned with the flow of reality. It is a state of effortless action, of doing by not doing, a way of moving through the world with the grace and power of water. This brings us to the beautiful and profound concept of Wu Wei. We have journeyed to a place of profound realization. we have seen that the universe is a single, flowing river of impermanence, a truth called anicca. We have looked deeply into our own being and found not a solid, separate rock standing against the current, but that we too are the river, a truth called anatta. This can leave us with a vital and practical question. If there is no fixed, controlling I at the center of my being, and if my wisest course is to flow with the current of life rather than fight it, then how am I supposed to act? Does this mean I become passive? A helpless leaf carried along by the stream? The wisdom of the East offers a powerful and beautiful answer, encapsulated in the Taoist concept of Wu Wei. While originating in Taoism, the spirit of Wu Wei is a perfect expression of the Zen mind in action. Wu Wei is often translated as non-action or non-doing, but this can be misleading. It does not mean laziness, apathy, or resignation. Its more accurate meaning is effortless action, or action that does not involve struggle. It is the state of moving through life with the grace and ease of water flowing downhill. It is the opposite of frantic, ego-driven striving, but it is also the opposite of passive inaction. It is a third way, a path of intelligent, spontaneous, and exquisitely effective engagement with the world. To understand Wu Wei, we can look at the simple metaphor of a dancer. Imagine a person learning a new dance routine. Their mind is a frantic storm of instructions and self-criticism. Step left, turn, arm up, no, that was wrong. Everyone is watching me. I look so clumsy. Their movements are stiff, calculated, awkward, and exhausting. The sense of a separate I is intensely present an I that is trying to force the body to perform correctly, an I that is judging every misstep. This is the action of the ego. It is full of effort, friction, and anxiety. Now, imagine a master dancer. The music begins, and their body simply moves. They are not thinking about the steps. They have practiced so diligently that the dance has become a part of their being. There is no longer a separation between the dancer, the dance, and the music. The I, who was once so self-conscious, has dissolved. There is only the pure, fluid, and joyful expression of the dance itself. This is Wu Wei. It is not the absence of action, but the absence of a struggling, separate actor. It is a state of profound skill that has become so internalized it appears as pure, effortless nature. The practices we have been exploring are a direct training in cultivating the ground for Wu Wei to arise. The stillness of Zazen and the constant return to the breath systematically quiet the noisy, calculating egoth part of us that is like the beginner dancer's inner critic. When that voice of striving and judgment is quieted, our natural, intuitive intelligence has the space to function without interference. Meditation builds a deep-seated trust in the natural process. As you sit, you learn to trust your body to breathe. You trust your mind to settle. You trust awareness to be present. This cultivates a capacity to trust the unfolding process of life, rather than feeling the constant need to manage and control it. Wu Wei is born from this trust. It can only happen in the present moment, because when we are lost in planning the future or regretting the past, we are operating from the headquarters of the ego. By anchoring ourselves in the now, we create the conditions for spontaneous, intelligent action to emerge, an action that is a perfect response to the reality of the situation as it is, not our idea of how it should be. The great Taoist sage, Zhuangzi, told a story that is perhaps the perfect illustration of Wu Wei. A lord was watching his personal cook, a man named Ding, as he carved up an ox carcass. The lord was mesmerized. Cook Ding's knife moved with the effortless grace of a dance. It flickered and glided, never seeming to strike a bone or a tough sinew. With a whisper of steel, the ox simply fell apart, its pieces laid out perfectly. The lord, amazed, summoned the cook and asked for his secret. Cook Ding laid down his knife and replied, "What I care about is the way, which goes beyond skill. When I first began to cut up oxen, all I could see was the ox itself. After 3 years, I no longer saw the whole ox. And now, I meet it with my spirit and don't look with my eyes. My senses stop, and my spirit moves where it wants. I follow the natural makeup of the ox, my knife gliding through the big hollows, and so I have never touched the smallest ligament or tendon, let alone a major bone. He explained that a good cook changes his knife once a year because he cuts, and a mediocre cook changes his once a month because he hacks. But his own knife was 19 years old and had carved thousands of oxen, yet its blade was as sharp as if it had just come from the whetstone. This was because his knife never encountered any resistance. It always found the empty spaces. Cook Ding is the embodiment of Wu Wei. He is not thinking. He has gone beyond mere technique and entered a state of pure flow. His action is a perfect, harmonious response to the reality of the ox's anatomy. The eye that would try to force the knife, the eye that would hack and struggle, has completely disappeared. There is only the seamless, intelligent, and effortless process of carving. He moves with the grain of reality, not against it. This principle is not just for ancient Chinese cooks. It is a profound guide for navigating our own complex lives. In our work, we so often operate from a place of tense, anxious striving. We try to control every variable, micromanage every detail, and force projects to meet our rigid timelines. This leads to stress and burnout. The path of Wu Wei suggests a different approach. Prepare diligently, master your craft, and then, in the moment of execution, learn to trust your intuition. Let go of the white-knuckled grip and respond intelligently to challenges as they actually arise, rather than trying to solve every hypothetical problem in advance. In creativity, Wu Wei is the holy grail. It is the writer who feels the story is writing itself, the musician lost in a state of pure improvisation, the painter whose hand seems to move with a wisdom of its own. This magic only happens when the inner critic, the egoist, is silenced, and we allow the creative impulse to flow through us without obstruction. Perhaps most powerfully, Wu Wei can transform our relationships. So often we approach our relationships with a hidden agenda. We try to manage the other person, to change them, to make them fit our idea of who they should be. This is a form of violence, and it creates endless conflict. A relationship lived in the spirit of Wu Wei is one of radical presence and trust. It is the practice of listening deeply, of responding authentically to the actual person in front of you, not your story about them. It is trusting the relationship to have its own intelligence, to unfold in its own way, rather than forcing it down a path of our own making. Wu Wei, then, is the ultimate integration of the truths of impermanence and no-self. It is the experience of action without an actor. When you realize you are the flowing river, your actions cease to be the struggling movements of a separate self trying to swim upstream. Instead, your actions become the very movement of the river itself, graceful, powerful, and perfectly adapted to the terrain. We have now journeyed through some of the highest peaks of Eastern philosophy. We have seen how a different understanding of reality can lead to a profoundly different way of being. Now, it is time to bring this lofty wisdom down to the earth of our own direct experience. How can these profound insights become a practical, healing medicine for the most common and painful wounds of the modern mind? How can the silence, the presence, and the flow we have been cultivating be applied directly to the fire of our anxiety? We have journeyed through the high mountains of philosophy, exploring the profound truths of emptiness, impermanence, and no-self. We have seen how these insights can lead to a state of effortless, flowing action called Wu Wei. Now, we bring this wisdom down from the mountain peaks and carry it into the wounded valleys of our own hearts. It is time to apply these powerful tools directly to one of the most common and painful afflictions of the modern human mind, the relentless, suffocating fire of anxiety. The purpose of this path is not simply to acquire interesting ideas, but to develop a practical medicine for our own suffering. Viewed through the lens of the wisdom we have cultivated, anxiety reveals its true nature. Anxiety is almost never about the present moment. It is the experience of suffering in advance. It is the mind leaving the reality of the now, projecting itself into a non-existent future, creating a catastrophic story of what if, and then triggering the body to react as if that terrible story is happening right now. It is the ultimate expression of the second arrow. The first arrow might be a real-world challenge in upcoming medical appointment, a difficult conversation, a financial uncertainty, but the anxiety itself, The heart-pounding, stomach-churning torment is the volley of 1,000-second arrows we shoot at ourselves through our own fearful thoughts. To heal anxiety, then, is not to change the world so that there are no more first arrows. It is to learn how to lay down our own bow. The first step is a form of emergency first aid. When the storm of an anxiety or panic attack hits, the thinking mind is the most dangerous place in the world. It is the engine of the storm. Do not try to reason your way out of it. Do not argue with the anxious thoughts. That is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. The first, most crucial action is to drop out of the treacherous narrative in your head and anchor yourself firmly in the solid ground of the body. Find your breath. You don't even have to change it at first. Just feel it. Feel the air, cool on the in-breath, warm on the out-breath. The anxious story is about the future, but the breath is happening right now. It is your first point of contact with reality. Then, expand your awareness. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel the solid weight of your body sitting in your chair. Notice the texture of the fabric on your skin. Press your palms together firmly. This flood of present moment sensory information acts as an emergency brake on the future tripping mind. It sends a powerful signal to your nervous system. You are here. You are safe. You are in the present moment, not in the scary movie playing in your head. Once the immediate intensity of the storm has passed, once you have found the anchor, you can begin to engage with the energy of anxiety in a new and revolutionary way. Our lifelong instinct is to hate our anxiety. We see it as an enemy, an intruder to be fought, suppressed, or medicated into submission. This struggle, this inner war, is precisely what gives the anxiety its power. Resistance is its fuel. The path of wisdom invites us to do something that feels deeply counterintuitive, to turn toward our anxiety, not with aggression, but with a gentle curiosity. We can learn to befriend our fear. Instead of fighting it, we can have a dialogue with it, as if it were a frightened child pulling at our sleeve. We can ask it, with a genuine and kind inner voice, "What are you trying to protect me from? What is it you are so afraid will happen?" If you listen patiently, the answer that arises is often simple and profound. It is the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of being seen as inadequate, the fear of losing control. Simply acknowledging this core fear, without judgment, can be profoundly healing. You are no longer fighting a monstrous, abstract anxiety. You are listening to a vulnerable part of yourself that is simply trying, in a misguided way, to keep you safe. There is a legendary story from the life of the great Tibetan yogi, Milarepa, that perfectly illustrates this principle of non-resistance. One day, Milarepa returned to his meditation cave to find it filled with ferocious, terrifying demons. They were snarling, breathing fire, and brandishing weapons. His first reaction was to fight. He tried to chase them out, but they just laughed. He performed powerful magical rites, but they were unimpressed. He even tried to teach them the Dharma, to lecture them on the nature of reality, but they paid him no mind. Finally, exhausted and defeated, Milarepa surrendered. He stopped fighting completely. He walked to the center of the cave, looked at the most terrifying demon, and said, "It seems you are here to stay. Let's have tea." He prostrated himself before the chief demon, and in an act of total surrender, placed his head inside the demon's dripping jaws. In that instant, every single demon vanished. The demons in Milarepa's cave are a metaphor for our own inner demons, our anxieties, our fears, our traumas, our self-critical thoughts. The story teaches us that these demons are made of our own resistance. The more we fight them, the more real and solid they become. The moment we stop fighting, the moment we accept their presence, the moment we can even offer them a cup of tea, they lose their power. They were never solid entities to begin with. They were illusions held in place by our own struggle. This leads to the most direct and embodied practice for working with anxiety. Anxiety is not just a thought, it is a powerful physical sensation, a tightness in the chest, a hollow knot in the stomach, a racing heart, a constriction in the throat. Our habit is to feel this sensation, label it unbearable anxiety, and then do everything in our power to make it go away. The practice of surrender, inspired by Milarepa, is to separate the raw physical sensation from the story we tell about it? Can you simply allow the knot in your stomach to be there? Without calling it anxiety, can you investigate it with curiosity? How big is it? Is it hot or cold? Is it vibrating or still? Can you breathe into it, not to make it go away, but just to surround it with spacious, accepting awareness? When you do this, you make a life-changing discovery. You find that you can survive the sensation. The sensation itself, while unpleasant, will not kill you. It is the story about the sensation, the story that says, I can't stand this, I have to escape, that creates the panic. When you unhook from the story and simply rest in awareness of the raw energy, you realize you are the vast, open sky, and the knot of anxiety is just a temporary storm cloud. You have the capacity to let it be there until it naturally dissipates. When we meet the raw, powerful energy of anxiety with this kind of spacious, non-judgmental awareness, we transform it. The energy that was once constricted into a painful knot of resistance is allowed to flow. It turns from a destructive, imploding force into simple, clean energy. The wind that was trapped in a tiny box, rattling it to pieces, is released into an open field. It is no longer a problem. It is just wind dynamic, vital, and alive. We learn to turn the poison of anxiety into the medicine of presence. This profound act of turning toward our own suffering with acceptance and kindness has an effect that ripples outward. As we learn to stop fighting with our own inner demons, we naturally become less inclined to fight with the so-called demons in the world around us. As we practice offering compassion to the frightened parts of ourselves, we find our hearts opening to the frightened parts of others. The inner healing of our own wounds is the fertile soil from which a genuine and universal compassion for all beings begins to grow. As we learn to turn inward and meet our own anxiety with the quiet courage of accepting awareness, a profound alchemy begins. The heart, once clenched in a tight fist of fear and self-criticism, begins to soften and open. This inner transformation, this act of befriending our own demons, does not remain confined to our private, internal world. It naturally, inevitably, begins to radiate outward, changing the very way we see and interact with everyone and everything around us. This outward radiation of an awakened heart is the essence of what is known in the Buddhist tradition as karuna, or compassion. Compassion, along with loving kindness, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, is considered one of the four sublime states, the most beautiful and noble qualities of a liberated mind. But it is crucial to understand that karuna is not what we typically think of as pity. Pity is a hierarchical emotion. It comes from a place of separation. I, the healthy and fortunate one, feel sorry for you, the sick and unfortunate one. Pity maintains the wall between self and other. True compassion, in the Zen sense, is the very opposite. It is the emotional resonance that arises when that wall of separation dissolves. It is the visceral, heartfelt recognition of a shared reality. It is the feeling of your suffering is my suffering, not as a poetic idea, but as a simple statement of fact. This kind of profound compassion is not a sentimental or groundless emotion. It is the logical and unavoidable consequence of wisdom. It is what happens to the heart when the mind truly understands the truths we have been exploring. When you have looked deeply into your own dukkha, when you have felt the sting of your own anxiety and the ache of your own loneliness, you can no longer judge others harshly for their own struggles. You look at a person acting out in anger, and instead of seeing a monster, you see their pain. You see someone caught in the grip of their own suffering, someone shooting themselves with second arrows, just as you have done so many times. When you understand the truth of anatta, or no self, you recognize that other people are also being driven by the same unconscious, chattering monkey mind and the same fragile, defensive ego that you have discovered within yourself. How can you hold someone in contempt for being trapped in the same universal human predicament? Judgment gives way to a deep and sorrowful empathy. And most profoundly, when you truly grasp the truth of interdependence, the truth that nothing and no one exist in isolation, compassion becomes the most natural impulse in the world. You realize that their well-being is intrinsically tied to your own. We are not separate islands, We are all interconnected waves on the same ocean. This is why the path to developing compassion for others must always begin with developing compassion for ourselves. We cannot pour from an empty cup. If we are constantly at war with ourselves, berating ourselves for our flaws and imperfections, we will have no genuine kindness to offer the world. The practice of compassion begins at home, with the radical act of forgiving yourself for being human. It is turning that same gentle, non-judgmental awareness that we used for our anxiety toward all of our own messy, beautiful, and imperfect parts. To actively cultivate this open heart, we can engage in the formal practice of metta, or loving kindness meditation. This is a systematic method for warming the heart and dissolving the barriers of us versus them. The practice is simple and gentle. You begin by finding a comfortable posture and offering phrases of loving kindness to yourself. You might repeat silently, "May I be safe, may I be healthy, may I be happy, may I live with ease." You repeat these phrases, allowing the feeling behind them to permeate your being. Once you feel a sense of warmth and self-acceptance, you expand the circle. You bring to mind a dear friend or loved one, someone for whom you feel effortless affection. You then offer them the same wishes. May you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be happy, may you live with ease. Feel your heart extending towards them. Next, you bring to mind a neutral person, someone you neither like nor dislike, perhaps a clerk at a store or a person you pass on the street. You offer them the same heartfelt wishes. This begins to stretch the muscle of your compassion beyond its usual limits. Then comes the most challenging and transformative step. You bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom you have conflict or resentment. Seeing past the difficulty, you recognize their own suffering, their own humanity, and you try as best you can to offer them the same wishes for peace and well-being. This is not about condoning their harmful actions. It is about freeing your own heart from the poison of hatred. Finally, you radiate these wishes outward in all directions, north, south, east, and west, to all living beings without exception. May all beings everywhere be safe, healthy, happy, and live with ease. This practice, done regularly, is like emotional weightlifting. It systematically weakens the walls of separation and strengthens the heart's innate capacity for boundless, unconditional love. This compassion is not meant to be a passive, internal feeling. It is the engine for wise and engaged action. There is a moving story from the life of the Buddha that demonstrates this perfectly. Within the community of monks, there was one man who was afflicted with a foul, contagious skin disease. His sores oozed, he was in constant pain, and his robes were soiled with blood and pus. The other monks, out of fear and disgust, would not go near him. He was left utterly alone in his misery. The Buddha heard of the monk's plight and went directly to his dwelling. He did not offer words of comfort from a distance. With his own hands, he began to boil water. He then gently and patiently washed the sick monk's sores, cleaned his body, and washed his soiled robes, tending to him as a mother would a child. His attendant, Ananda, was astonished by this display. The Buddha, seeing his surprise, said to him, "Ananda, this man is sick and has no one to care for him. Whoever would tend to me should tend to the sick." He explained that to care for the most suffering and neglected being is the same as caring for a Buddha, for the seed of awakening and the reality of suffering exist within every single being. This is karuna in action. It is wisdom and love made manifest. The Buddha saw no separation between himself and the sick monk. He saw only dukkha that needed to be alleviated, and he responded directly and skillfully. This is the hallmark of true compassion. When paired with the wisdom of interdependence and no self, it does not lead to sentimental burnout or foolish self-sacrifice. It leads to intelligent, discerning, and sustainable action. It is a powerful, clear-seeing force, the heart's natural and unwavering response to seeing the world as it truly is. This quality of compassionate awareness, born of wisdom and nurtured by practice, is not something to be reserved only for moments of crisis or for our formal meditation sessions. Its true transformative power is revealed when we learn to infuse it into the very fabric of our lives, into the most ordinary, mundane, and often resented activities. When the sacred insight of interconnection meets the profane reality of our daily chores, something truly miraculous can happen. This brings us to the discovery of Zen in the simple, humble acts of washing the dishes and sweeping the floor. The path of wisdom we have been walking has led us to a place of profound inner transformation. We have learned to meet our own anxiety with kindness and to cultivate a heart of compassion for others. It is easy to feel a sense of peace and clarity while sitting on a meditation cushion or contemplating these beautiful ideas. But then, the meditation ends. We must get up and face the relentless demands of our ordinary lives, the emails that need answering, the floors that need sweeping, the endless pile of dishes in the sink. A division is often created in our minds. There is the sacred time of our spiritual practice, and then there is the profane time of our daily chores and obligations. We see one as a refuge and the other as a burden. Zen wisdom, however, tells us that this division is a complete illusion. The sacred is not found by escaping the mundane. It is found by entering into it with our whole being. Let us look closely at the source of our frustration with daily tasks. Is the act of washing a single dish in itself a source of profound suffering? Is the physical motion of sweeping a floor an inherently miserable experience? Unlikely. The suffering does not come from the task itself. It comes from our state of mind while performing the task. Our mind is almost always living in the future. We are washing the dishes so that we can get them done. We are sweeping the floor in order to have a clean house. We are enduring the traffic jam so that we can finally get to work. In this state of mind, the present moment is not seen as our life. It is seen as an obstacle. The act of washing the dish is an impediment to the future moment when we can finally sit down and relax with a cup of tea. We are at war with what is happening right now. This inner resistance, this get-it-over-with mentality, is what turns a simple task into a source of tension, resentment, and drudgery. We are not living our lives. We are trying to fast forward through them. The great Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, offers a powerful teaching on this very subject, using the simple act of washing the dishes. He explains that if, while washing the dishes, we are thinking only of the cup of tea that awaits us, then we are completely incapable of appreciating the miracle of life. We are not truly alive during the time we are washing the dishes. We are a phantom lost in the future, and when we finally finish and sit down to drink our tea, we will be equally incapable of enjoying it. While drinking the tea, our mind will already have jumped ahead to the next thing, what we need to do tomorrow, what we are worried about next week. We will be swept away, never truly present for any part of our experience. His profound advice is that we must wash the dishes to wash the dishes. We must hold each bowl as if it were a sacred object. The act of washing is the reality of that moment, and we must give it our full attention. If we are incapable of washing the dishes in mindfulness, he says, we will be equally incapable of drinking our tea in mindfulness. The quality of our attention in one moment determines the quality of our attention in the next. This is not an abstract idea. It is a deeply practical guide to transforming your life. Let us take the act of washing dishes as our formal practice. Instead of being lost in the radio of your mind, you can choose to bring your full awareness into your body and your senses. Start by feeling the solid ground beneath your feet at the sink. Then, feel the warmth of the water on your hands. Notice its temperature, the way it flows over your skin. See the light shimmering on the surface of the bubbles. Notice their rainbow colors and their fragility. Smell the clean, fresh scent of the soap. Hear the sound of the water running and the satisfying clink of one plate against another. Feel the texture of the sponge, the smoothness of the clean plate. When your mind inevitably wanders away to a worry or a plan, will you simply notice it? Ah, there is the mind, thinking about work. And then, with gentleness, you guide your attention back to the reality of the warm water and the bubbles. Each return is a moment of victory. Each return is a moment of waking up. You can even infuse the act with a sense of gratitude. As you wash each plate, you can feel gratitude for the food it held, for the nourishment it gave you, for the farmers who grew the food and the people who prepared it. The chore is no longer a burden. It becomes a ritual of presence and appreciation. There is a famous Zen proverb that encapsulates this entire teaching. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. This is a statement of profound importance. Awakening does not mean that you will suddenly be free from the ordinary responsibilities of human life. You will still have to work, pay your bills, do your laundry, and care for your family. The outer circumstances of your life may not change at all. The transformation is entirely internal. It is a radical shift in the quality of your awareness as you perform these tasks. Before enlightenment, you chop the wood while dreaming of a future state of perfect peace. You resent the task and see it as an obstacle to your spiritual goal. After enlightenment, you just chop wood. Your full being is present in the swing of the axe, the feeling of the wood splitting, the scent of the pine. The act of chopping wood has become your meditation. The sacred has been discovered, not in a distant heaven, but right here in the woodpile. This principle extends to every corner of our lives. When you are driving to work, instead of being lost in anxious thoughts and frustration at the traffic, can you simply be present with the act of driving? Can you feel your hands on the steering wheel, see the colors of the cars around you, and listen to the sound of the engine, all without the angry, judgmental commentary? When you are at your job, can you bring your full attention to writing a single email or to truly listening to a colleague in a meeting without being mentally 10 steps ahead? Can you approach your work not as a series of tasks to be checked off, but as a series of present moments to be fully inhabited? When you do this, the artificial wall between my life and my spiritual practice dissolves. Your entire life becomes your practice. Your office becomes your monastery. Your kitchen sink becomes your altar. Every moment, no matter how mundane, becomes a golden opportunity to be present, to be aware, to be truly alive. When we learn to find this sense of peace and presence in the heart of our ordinary activities, a great weight begins to lift. We are no longer constantly trying to escape the now. The present moment ceases to be an obstacle and becomes our sanctuary, our true home. This deep and abiding sense of being at home in the present has a powerful consequence. It naturally loosens the tight, fearful grip of the two great tyrants of the mind, the ghosts of the past and the phantoms of the future. When we are fully grounded in the reality of what is, the illusions of what was and what might be lose their power to haunt us. This brings us to the profound and liberating art of letting go. By learning to find the sacred in the profane, to discover our monastery at the kitchen sink, we cultivate a deep and abiding sense of being at home in the present moment. The now ceases to be an obstacle to get through and becomes our sanctuary. This profound shift has a powerful, liberating consequence. It allows us to finally put down the invisible burdens that we have been carrying for our entire lives. We walk through the world weighed down by two enormous sacks, wondering why we are so exhausted. In one sack, we carry the heavy, jagged rocks of the past. In the other, we carry the cold, leaden weights of the future. The art of letting go is the practice of realizing we can simply untie the ropes, let these sacks fall to the ground, and walk on with a newfound lightness and freedom. Let us first look into the sack of the past. It is filled with our regrets, our grievances, our resentments. It contains all the if-onlys and what-ifs that we replay in an endless loop. It is heavy with old hurts and disappointments. The fundamental truth we must grasp is that the past is not real. It exists only as a thought, a neural imprint arising in the mind in this present moment. When we ruminate on a past grievance, we are choosing to suffer now because of something that is no longer happening. As the saying goes, to hold on to resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person will die. We are the only victims of our own refusal to let go. This brings us to the courageous act of forgiveness. Forgiveness is perhaps the most misunderstood of all spiritual practices. We often see it as a gift we are giving to the person who wronged us, an act of condoning their harmful behavior. But this is not the case. Forgiveness is an act of profound self-love. It is the selfish, intelligent decision to no longer allow the events of the past to create suffering for us in the present. It is the act of putting down the hot coal of resentment so that we are no longer the one being burned. It is a declaration of inner freedom, a statement that says, I will no longer be a prisoner of my own history. This applies with equal, if not greater, force to forgiving ourselves. We carry so much guilt and shame for our past mistakes. To forgive ourselves is to accept our flawed humanity, to put down the rock of self-recrimination, and to allow ourselves the grace to begin anew in this present moment. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly illustrates this act of carrying the past. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long journey. Their monastic vows were very strict, and one of the most important rules was that they were forbidden from touching a woman. As they walked, they came to a river with a swift, strong current. A beautiful young woman stood at the river's edge, weeping because she was afraid to cross. The junior monk, rigorously adhering to the rule, walked straight past her and crossed the river. The senior monk, however, paused. Without a word, he walked over to the woman, lifted her into his arms, carried her across the turbulent water, and gently set her down on the other side. He then bowed and continued his journey. For hours afterwards, the two monks walked in silence. But the junior monk was fuming. His mind was a storm of judgment and agitation. Finally, he could stand it no longer. He burst out, "Brother, how could you do that? Our vows are sacred. We are forbidden to even look at a woman, let alone touch one. What you did was a serious transgression." The senior monk looked at him with a calm, kind expression and replied softly, "Brother, I set that woman down by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story reveals our own condition with perfect clarity. We are so often like the junior monk. An event happens, an argument, an insult, a disappointment. The event itself is over in a matter of moments. But we pick it up. We carry it in our minds for hours, for days, for years. We replay the scene. We nurse the grievance. We fuel the resentment. The person who wronged us may have long since forgotten the incident, but we are still carrying them on our back, allowing them to weigh us down and poison our present experience. Letting go of the past is the simple, radical act of putting the woman down by the river. Now, let us look into the other sack, the one filled with the future. This sack is heavy with our anxieties, our worries, our expectations, our elaborate plans and hopes. Just as we are haunted by the ghosts of the past, we are terrorized by the phantoms of the future. It is vital to distinguish between wise, skillful planning and anxious, painful attachment. It is necessary and intelligent to plan for the future, to save money for retirement, to make a doctor's appointment, to prepare for a work presentation. This is using the thinking mind as a valuable tool. The suffering does not come from planning. It comes from our rigid attachment to a specific outcome. We create a detailed movie in our heads of how things should be, how people should act, how our life should unfold. Then, when reality, in its infinite and unpredictable complexity, deviates from our mental script, we suffer. We become anxious before the event, trying to control every variable, and we become disappointed or angry after the event if it did not match our expectations. Letting go of the future means letting go of this rigid attachment. It is the wisdom of doing our absolute best in the present moment, preparing diligently, acting with integrity, and then surrendering the result to the great, flowing river of life. It is a deep trust that we have the inner resources to handle whatever comes, rather than trying to mentally solve every problem that might possibly arise. It is important to understand that letting go is not a single, dramatic event where we drop the sacks once and for all. It is a continuous, moment-to-moment practice. Our minds are conditioned to grasp and to carry. A memory will surface, a worry will appear. The practice is not to never have these thoughts, but to notice, with gentle awareness, when we have unconsciously picked up a rock again. We can notice, there I am, carrying that old resentment again. Or, I see I've picked up that heavy worry about next week. In that moment of noticing, we have a choice. We can continue to carry it, or we can gently put it down by returning our attention to the simple reality of the present moment, to the feeling of our breath, or the sound of the birds outside. It is a practice of mental hygiene, as necessary and as routine as brushing our teeth each day. As we become more skilled at this gentle, continuous practice of letting go, we begin to feel a profound sense of lightness. Our steps become easier, our minds become clearer, our hearts become more open. Life ceases to be an exhausting struggle, a long march under a heavy load. It begins to feel more like a dance, no longer weighed down by the baggage of a past that is gone and a future that is yet to come. We are free. We are free to engage with the world with our full energy, creativity, and joy. We are free to simply be here now. This process of letting go of the unnecessary, of the heavy mental and emotional clutter, naturally leads to a simplification of our outer lives as well. We start to realize that we don't need so much to be happy. This brings us to an appreciation for a different kind of beauty found not in opulence and perfection, but in the humble, the imperfect, and the simple. This is the quiet wisdom of wabi-sabi. As we learn to put down the heavy sacks of the past and future, we begin to walk through the world with a newfound lightness. The present moment, once an obstacle to be overcome, becomes our sanctuary. This return to the simple reality of the now naturally inspires a reevaluation of our relationship with the world of things. We begin to question the relentless cultural pressure to acquire more, to upgrade, to achieve a state of polished, airbrushed perfection. We begin to suspect that happiness is not found in accumulation, but in appreciation. This shift in perspective leads us to a profound and quiet Japanese aesthetic philosophy, a worldview known as wabi-sabi. It is an antidote to the anxieties of our perfectionistic, consumer-driven age, and a guide to finding a deeper, more authentic kind of beauty. Wabi-sabi is a concept that defies easy translation, as it points to a feeling, an atmosphere, rather than a concrete definition. It is composed of two separate but related ideas. Wabi originally referred to the loneliness of living in nature, away from society. Over time, it evolved to embody a sense of rustic simplicity, of quiet satisfaction with a humble life. It is the contentment found in a simple bowl of rice, the feeling of quietude in a rustic cabin. Sabi speaks to the beauty that comes with age, with the passage of time. It is the poignant loveliness of something that is weathered, faded, and marked by experience. It is the serene beauty of an old, moss-covered stone, the dark patina on a piece of silver, the character in the face of an elderly person. When combined, wabi-sabi points to a beauty that is found in things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. It is a radical departure from the classical Western ideals of beauty, which prize symmetry, flawlessness, and monumental permanence. Wabi-sabi finds beauty in the asymmetrical, the cracked, the modest, and the transient. Think of a handmade ceramic teacup, its shape slightly irregular, its glaze uneven. This is wabi. Over years of use, it acquires a small crack, which is then carefully repaired with golden lacquer. This practice, known as kintsugi, does not hide the damage, but celebrates it. The crack becomes the most beautiful part of the cup, a testament to its history and resilience. This is sabi. Wabi-sabi is the beauty of a weathered wooden barn, its silvered planks telling the story of countless seasons. It is the heartbreaking beauty of a single cherry blossom, precisely because we know it will be gone in a few days. It is a philosophy that finds richness not in gloss and glamour, but in authenticity, humility, and the quiet dignity of things as they are. This aesthetic is a powerful medicine for the modern affliction of perfectionism. Our culture is obsessed with the flawless. We apply digital filters to our photos to smooth our skin and hide our imperfections. We strive for the perfect career trajectory, the perfect family, the perfect home. This relentless pursuit of an unattainable ideal is a primary source of our anxiety and self-loathing. We are constantly at war with reality, because reality is, by its very nature, imperfect, messy, and flawed. Wabi-sabi offers a gentle truce in this war. It invites us to see the beauty in our own imperfections, to accept our own cracks and flaws not as failures, but as integral parts of our unique story. Our scars, our vulnerabilities, our mistakes, these are the golden lacquer that gives our life its character and depth. It is a radical act of self-compassion, a quiet declaration that we are beautiful, not in spite of our imperfections, but because of them. There is a famous story about the great 16th century tea master, Senno Rikyu, who was the ultimate arbiter of wabi-sabi aesthetics. His son was tasked with cleaning the garden and stone path leading to the tea house in preparation for a visit from a feudal lord. The son, wanting to impress his father, worked for hours. He scrubbed the stones, raked the moss, and swept away every single fallen leaf until the entire garden was immaculate, a picture of sterile perfection. He proudly presented his work to Rikyu. The tea master surveyed the flawless garden in silence for a long moment. Then, he walked quietly over to a maple tree, whose leaves were turning a brilliant crimson. He reached up, took hold of a branch, and gave it a gentle shake. A few crimson leaves fluttered down, scattering in a random, natural pattern across the perfectly clean stone path. There, Rikyu said with a simple nod, "Now it is ready." The son had created a garden that was trying to deny nature. Rikyu, with his simple gesture, reintroduced the element of the natural, the uncontrived, the imperfect. He understood that true beauty must acknowledge the reality of impermanence and the effortless grace of nature. This worldview has a natural connection to the practice of spiritual minimalism. Minimalism in this context is not merely an interior design trend. It is the conscious and deliberate choice to remove the non-essential from our lives in order to make space for what truly matters. Our consumer culture relentlessly tells us that our happiness is dependent on the next purchase. If only I had a new car, a bigger television, the latest phone, then I would be happy. We have seen the futility of this on the hedonic treadmill. Wabi-sabi offers a way off the treadmill. It teaches us that joy comes not from acquiring more, but from deeply appreciating the simple things we already have. It is the joy found in a single, well-loved wooden chair, rather than a formal dining set that is never used. It is the comfort of a worn-out sweater that holds memories. When we embrace this, we find our desire for more begins to naturally fall away. By reducing the clutter in our external environment, we create the conditions for a less cluttered mind. A simple room can lead to a simple heart. This is a profound shift from a life based on more to a life based on enough. To find this point of enough is to find a deep and abiding contentment that is independent of external circumstances. It is also a deeply compassionate and ecological way of living. It honors things by using them well, by mending them when they break, and by appreciating their beauty even as they age and decay. It is a gentle but firm rebellion against the throwaway culture that is creating so much suffering for both our psyches and our planet. When we learn to let go of the need for more, when we stop chasing an impossible ideal of perfection, and when we learn to see the profound, quiet beauty in the simple, imperfect reality that is right here in front of us, our entire relationship with the world begins to shift. We are no longer trying to dominate it, to fix it, to force it to match our desires. We stop seeing the world as a project to be managed or a threat to be defended against. We can finally relax. We can begin to relate to the world as a partner, not an adversary. This leads us to question the very nature of that relationship. Have we spent our lives building fences to protect a small, frightened self from the world? Or can we learn to see our life as a garden, a space to be cultivated with care, wisdom, and an open heart? Having journeyed through the practices of letting go and finding beauty in the unadorned simplicity of wabi-sabi, we arrive at a fundamental turning point in our relationship with life itself. We are faced with a choice we make not once, but in every moment of our existence. It is the choice between building a fence and cultivating a garden. For our entire lives, most of us have been unconsciously engaged in the project of building a fence. The world seems dangerous, unpredictable, and full of things that can harm our fragile sense of self. And so, we build walls. We build them out of our rigid opinions, our hard and fast beliefs, our judgments, our fears, and our routines. We create a small, supposedly safe enclosure for our ego to live in, and we spend our days and nights patrolling the perimeter, constantly on guard against anything or anyone that might threaten our territory. This is a life of contraction, of defense, of anxiety. It is an exhausting and lonely existence inside a fortress of our own making. The path of Zen offers a radically different alternative. It invites us to stop building the fence and to start cultivating a garden. In this worldview, the world is not a threat to be defended against, but a field of infinite potential to be engaged with. Life is not a battle to be won, but a creative process to be joined. The work is not to protect a small, separate self from the outside world, but to cultivate a rich, fertile, and harmonious inner world so that we can meet the outer world with wisdom, compassion, and grace. The gardener does not see a rainstorm as an attack. They see it as nourishment. They do not see a weed as an enemy. They see it as a misplaced plant that needs to be skillfully handled. The gardener works with the forces of nature, not against them. To shift from being a fence builder to being a gardener is to shift from a life of fear to a life of trust. This shift reveals a profound truth. Our reality is not shaped by the objective events of our lives, but by our subjective reaction to those events. The same event can be a catastrophe or an opportunity, depending entirely on the state of our inner world. Imagine being laid off from a job. For the fence builder, whose identity is tied to their career and whose worldview is based on fear, this is a disaster. It is a personal failure, a confirmation that the world is hostile and insecure. Their reality becomes one of anxiety, shame, and despair. For the gardener, the event is still painful, but their relationship to it is different. They see it not as a final judgment on their worth, but as an unexpected turn in the path. It is a painful clearing of the land that creates the space for something new to grow. It becomes an opportunity to rest, to reevaluate their path, to learn a new skill, or to spend more time with their family. The external event is the same, but the reality experienced is worlds apart. We do not live in the world. We live in our relationship to the world, and that relationship is something we can absolutely cultivate. So how do we tend to this inner garden? The tools are the very practices we have been exploring. We weed the garden by noticing our habitual negative thought patterns, the weeds of resentment, self-criticism, and catastrophic thinking. Through mindfulness, we learn to see these weeds without identifying with them, and in doing so, we rob them of their power to dominate the landscape of our mind. We water and fertilize the garden by actively cultivating positive states. We water the seeds of loving kindness through metta-meditation. We enrich the soil of our consciousness with the deep, silent nourishment of zazen. We learn to understand the particular nature of our own garden, its unique soil composition, its areas of sun and shade. This means understanding our own conditioning, our personal triggers, and our habitual emotional reactions with a clear-seeing and non-judgmental awareness. When we tend to our inner garden in this way, the outer world begins to reflect its beauty. A mind cultivated in compassion will naturally perceive the goodness in others. A mind cultivated in stillness will be able to find peace even amidst external chaos. There is a wonderful ancient story that captures the essence of this choice between changing the world and changing ourselves. A powerful and wealthy king once ruled a vast land. He was a good king, but he had one peculiar problem. His feet were exquisitely sensitive, and walking on the rough, stony ground of his kingdom caused him great pain. Frustrated by his constant discomfort, he came up with a grand solution. He issued a decree that his entire kingdom must be covered in soft, supple leather. His servants were to work day and night, slaughtering thousands of cattle and stitching their hides together to pave every road, every path, and every field, so that his royal feet would never have to touch the rough ground again. It was an impossible, ruinous task, but it was the king's command. As the project began, a wise and humble court jester came before the king. "Your Majesty," he said with a bow, "I have a much simpler, faster, and less expensive solution to your problem." The king, intrigued, commanded him to speak. The jester said, "Instead of trying to cover the entire earth in leather, Why not simply cut 2 small pieces of leather and wrap them around your own feet? And in that moment, the first pair of shoes was conceived. We are all that king. Our sensitive ego, our tender self, feels the pain of the rough and unpredictable world. Our instinctive royal command is to try and change the entire world to suit our preferences. We demand that other people change, that circumstances conform to our desires, that life stop being so difficult. We are trying to pave the entire planet with leather. It is an exhausting, impossible, and ultimately arrogant task. The wisdom of the gardener, the wisdom of the jester, points to a much simpler way. The practice is not to change the world, but to change our own point of contact with the world. We craft our own shoes. These shoes are our inner resilience, our compassion, our mindfulness, our acceptance of imperfection. With these shoes on, we can walk on any ground, no matter how rough, with a sense of balance, grace, and peace. To shift from being a fence builder to being a gardener is the journey from a life of fear to a life of creative engagement. It is the realization that the quality of our life is determined not by what happens to us, but by the state of the garden within. It is the understanding that true power lies not in controlling the world, but in cultivating ourselves. This entire journey of watching the mind, of letting go of the past, of washing the dishes with presence, of cultivating the inner gardenage, than a process of turning our attention inward. We have been looking for the source of suffering and the source of peace. And as we continue to look, we make one final, crucial discovery. We realize that the gardener we have been seeking, the great teacher with all the answers, the ultimate source of wisdom, was never out there to be found. The teacher has been here all along. This brings us to the final step in our journey, the discovery of the silent teacher within. The path we have walked together has been one of turning inward. We began by acknowledging the relentless noise of the unexamined mind. We looked deeply into the nature of the ego, that fragile sense of I that creates so much of our suffering. We followed it on its futile chase for happiness in the material world, and we faced the profound diagnosis of dukkha, the pervasive dissatisfaction that arises from a life spent at odds with reality. From there, we began the healing. We found our anchor in the breath, our stillness in the practice of zazen, and our power in the present moment. We learned to observe our thoughts without being them, to empty our cup with a beginner's mind, and even to glimpse the reality beyond logic with the tool of the koan. We saw that the world is a single, interconnected whole, that our lives are an impermanent, flowing river, and that our highest action is to move with this flow in a state of effortless grace. We have learned to bring this awareness to our deepest wounds and our most mundane chores. After all this, where have we arrived? We have arrived at the most important and most liberating discovery of all. The search is over because the teacher we have been looking for has been with us all along. Within each of us, there are 2 distinct voices, 2 sources of guidance. The first voice is loud, frantic, and familiar. It is the voice of the ego, the voice of the thinking mind. It speaks in words, in arguments, in complex analyses. It is driven by fear and desire. It lives in the past and the future, constantly whispering, "What if you fail? You need to do this to get their approval. Remember what happened last time? You must control this situation." This voice is a relentless commentator, a nervous strategist trying to manage a universe it cannot possibly control. For most of our lives, this is the only voice we have heard. We have mistaken its loud, anxious chatter for the voice of truth, for the very core of who we are. But as we practice, as we create silence, as we learn to observe the chattering mind without believing its every word, we begin to hear something else. Beneath the noise, there is another voice. It is quiet, it is calm. It often doesn't speak in words at all. It speaks in a felt sense, a gut feeling, a deep, intuitive knowing. This is the voice of stillness. This is the silent teacher within. It does not argue or analyze, it simply knows. It does not operate from a place of fear or desire, but from a place of deep, holistic wisdom that sees the whole picture. The anxious voice of the ego might scream 1,000 reasons why you should take a certain job. It's prestigious, it pays well, it will make you look successful. But the silent teacher might communicate a simple, heavy feeling in your gut that says, this is not your path. The practice is not about finding this silent teacher. The teacher is already here. The practice is about creating the inner silence in which this quiet voice can finally be heard. Zazen creates the silence. Mindfulness of the body attunes our ear to its nonverbal language. Letting go of attachment quiets the shouting desires that deafen us. Observing the ego allows us to recognize its frantic voice and not mistake it for true guidance. There is a beautiful ancient story that speaks to this truth. In a forgotten village, there was a large old statue by the side of the road. It was lumpen and ugly, made of cracked and weathered clay. The villagers paid it no mind. It was just a worthless piece of their landscape. One day, a traveling monk with wise eyes passed through the village. As he walked by the statue, something about it caught his attention. He took out a small mallet and tapped its side. Instead of a dull thud, a deep golden ring echoed through the air. The monk, smiling, understood at once. He gathered the villagers and guided them in a patient work. With water and soft cloths, they began to gently wash away the centuries of accumulated mud, clay, and grime. As the layers came off, something miraculous was revealed. Beneath the ugly exterior was a magnificent, breathtaking statue of the Buddha, cast in pure, solid gold. It had been there all along, its beauty and value completely obscured by the mud. We are all that golden statue. Our true nature, our Buddha nature, as it is called in Zen, is inherently wise, peaceful, and compassionate. It is pure gold. It lacks nothing. The problem is that it has been covered by layers and layers of mud, the mud of our conditioning, our fears, our traumas, our self-limiting beliefs, our egoic desires. The entire spiritual path is not a process of creating the gold. How could you create what is already perfect? The path is simply the gentle, patient, and compassionate work of washing away the mud. Each moment of mindful breathing is like a splash of clear water. Each period of zazen is like gently scraping away a layer of hardened clay. Each act of letting go, of forgiveness, of compassion, is like polishing the surface until it gleams. We are not becoming someone new. We are unbecoming everything that is not truly us, so that the radiant nature we have always possessed can finally shine forth. This realization leads to the ultimate empowerment. You are the final authority on your own experience. For so long, we tend to outsource our spiritual lives. We look for a guru, a master, a book, a religion, a system to give us the answers, to tell us who we are and how we should live. These external guides can be immensely helpful. Like the monk in the story, they can point to the statue and tell us that something precious lies beneath the mud. They can offer us the tools and techniques for washing it away, but they cannot do the washing for you, and they did not create the gold within you. Ultimately, the truth of any teaching is not validated because it is written in an ancient text or spoken by an enlightened master. It is validated in the laboratory of your own direct experience. You learn to trust yourself. This is not the arrogant, egoic trust that says, I know everything. It is the humble, quiet confidence that comes from knowing you have a direct line to a source of wisdom that is deeper than thought. It is learning to trust the wisdom of your body, the truth of your gut feeling, the clarity that arises from a state of deep inner stillness. When faced with a decision, you learn to listen not only to the frantic pros and cons list of the intellect, but also to the quiet, spacious feeling in your heart. You begin to navigate your life, not by a rigid map created by someone else, but by your own inner compass, your own silent teacher. The journey, which began with trying to escape the noise inside your head, ends with the discovery of an infallible guide in the silence of your own heart. You realize you were never lost, and you have always been home. Our journey together began in the noise, in the feeling of being overwhelmed by the ceaseless demands of the modern world and the frantic chatter of our own minds. We started as prisoners in a jail with no bars, trapped by our own thoughts. From that place of suffering, we began a journey inward. We dared to look at the nature of the restless monkey mind and the fragile, fearful ego. We saw the futility of the chase for happiness in a world of things, and we had the courage to face the universal diagnosis of dukkha, the pervasive dissatisfaction that comes from a life spent in resistance to reality. And then, we began to discover the path home. We found a steadfast anchor in the simple, humble reality of the breath. We learned the radical art of zazen, the practice of just sitting, of doing nothing at all. This stillness opened a doorway for us, the only door there is, into the sacred power of the present moment. Standing in that quiet space, we learned to watch the clouds of our thoughts and emotions drift by, realizing we are not the clouds, but the vast, unchanging sky. We learned to empty our cup with a beginner's mind, to let go of the invisible burdens of the past and future, and to find a profound beauty in the imperfect, simple, and ordinary fabric of our lives. This entire journey, this path of turning inward, led us to one final liberating discovery. The silent, wise, and compassionate teacher we were searching for was never outside of us. It was here all along, waiting patiently beneath the noise. The ultimate message of this path is both simple and profound. Peace is not a destination you must struggle to reach in some distant future. It is not the absence of problems or the arrival of perfect conditions. It is a space within you, a silent, aware presence that is here, now, in this very moment. Healing does not come from trying to change the world, from demanding that life finally conform to your desires. It comes from changing your relationship with the world, from learning to meet its joys and its sorrows with an open, non-judging, and compassionate heart. The greatest wisdom is not found in ancient books or in the words of any teacher. It is found in the silence of your own being. And so, you are left not with a set of answers, but with a sense of empowerment. You do not need a special cushion, an expensive retreat, or a perfect, quiet room to begin. You do not need to become someone else. Everything you need, you already have. You have your breath, your anchor to the present moment. You have this moment, the only place where life unfolds. The practice is simple. It is the courageous act of stopping, of sitting down right in the middle of your beautiful, messy, imperfect life and listening. Listen to the silence that lies beneath the thinking mind. That silence is your true nature. It is your birthright. It is home. The teacher is within. The healing is here. Just sit. Just listen.